Masaru is out cold when a mysterious voice drags him back to consciousness, forcing his eyes wide open. He freezes in total shock. The girl hovering right in front of him has real twitching bunny ears. Reflexively, he reaches out to touch them. They're warm, soft, and definitely not a dream. The girl recoils in a blushing mess, snapping at him to stop as Masaru frantically begs for forgiveness. Still confused, he blurts out the big question. Why on earth is she wearing those ears? She shoots back that they aren't props. She's a proud member of the rabbit race. Masaru bolts upright in a daze, ignoring her confused stares as the truth finally hits him like a freight train. This is a real-life reincarnation. He has officially been reborn into the legendary world of Alstatia, but then pure panic floods his system as he realizes he has no idea how he got here or how he's going to survive. Food, shelter, and even a basic bathroom, starting from absolute zero in a fantasy world, is a terrifying nightmare. Desperate, Masaru turns to the girl and begs her to take him back to her village. She hesitates, warning him that her people won't take kindly to a random human showing up at their gates. She explains that humans and demi-humans are bitter enemies, and the village elders are ruthless. It sounds like a dark fantasy trope to Masaru, making him worry about the cruel reality of this world. But before he can convince her to help, an eerie sound echoes through the trees. She scans the area but sees nothing, until a hideous hobgoblin lunges from the shadows, sending her into a terrified scream. She's in a total tailspin, crying out that they're doomed unless the village warriors show up to save them. Masaru eyes the beast's battle-scarred hide, sensing its raw lethality, as the girl screams that it's a powerful stray and they need to run for their lives right now. Masaru shoves her away and screams for her to run, drawing the hobgoblin's deadly gaze onto himself. She freezes, paralyzed by the thought of abandoning him to certain death. Masaru roars that she can't lead this beast back to her village and slaughter everyone she loves, then bellows at her to get moving. As she disappears into the trees, a terrifying thought hits him. He has absolutely no plan, but after seeing the sheer terror in her eyes, his body moved on its own. He couldn't just watch her die. He lunges forward, desperately wishing he had some legendary skill to survive this nightmare. In a final act of desperation, he grabs the only thing he has, a water bottle, and hurls it at the monster. The hobgoblin just laughs as it closes in for the kill, mocking his pathetic attack, until everything changes. The beast's foot catches the bottle, sending its massive frame wobbling out of control. It slams headfirst into a jagged rock and collapses, just as a shimmering portal tears open behind Masaru, and a voice mocks him for making such a mess. Before he can even blink, a stinging slap hits his hand as a woman's voice screams, demanding to know what kind of stunt he's pulling. She rants about the effort she spent summoning him to safety, only for him to wander into the wilderness and nearly get gutted by a lowly goblin. Masaru's jaw drops as he realizes the woman standing before him is the goddess Victinius herself. She stares back in shock, baffled that he's still breathing and asking if he completely forgot about the powers she gave him. Suddenly, the hazy memories of his reincarnation come flooding back in a blinding flash. Victinius silences his confusion with a bombshell. An earth god lost a high-stakes bet, and the prize was Masaru's soul being dragged into her realm. She lists his past life like a dossier, a 36-year-old retail worker and gamer now trapped in a youthful body, until Masaru, brain-melting, begs her to shut up. He prays this is all a fever dream, but Victinius crushes his hope, declaring this is his new reality and he has zero choice in the matter. She summons 3 blinding, radiant cards from thin air, announcing these are the divine blessings he's about to receive. Every single card is packed with a unique, game-changing skill, and all 3 are going straight to him. Masaru expected legendary swords or world-ending magic, but Victinius mocks his gamer roots, telling him to just use the cards and start the transformation. Suddenly, the goddess Hera manifests, exposing a massive scam involving 8 tickets that leaves Victinius frozen in pure terror. Hera steps forward to apologize for this disaster, revealing that her husband Zeus and the idiot Victinius have completely bungled his reincarnation. Masaru's jaw hits the floor. The actual Zeus and Hera from Greek myth are real, and they were legally bound to give him massive support. He was promised a language cheat and massive buffs, but once a soul enters a new world, even gods lose their power to interfere. It turns out Victinius was trying to scam him, planning to steal 5 of his 8 blessing tickets for herself while leaving Masaru with scraps. Victinius squeezes her eyes shut and starts sobbing, pathetically trying to tune out the sound of her own betrayal. Suddenly, a massive glowing slot machine erupts into existence right before their eyes. Victinius admits the skills are randomized by fate, but Hera reveals a secret, A 10-ticket pull triggers a massive legendary bonus. Hera tosses in a bonus ticket for Zeus's mistake, and a humiliated Victinius adds one more, giving Masaru the 10 tickets he needs for a massive roll. Hera insisted that rolling for 11 skills was a legendary privilege, demanding Masaru show some real gratitude. Masaru nodded, showing the goddesses the respect they deserved. He stepped up and cranked the handle of the divine slot machine to gamble for his future. Victinius watched with tear-soaked eyes, holding her breath to see what kind of powers he'd actually pull. When he landed appraisal level 3 and masonry level 4, Hera cheered, shocked that his luck stat was actually through the roof. The machine kept spinning, granting him the power to dismantle the living at level 2. Next up, he snagged level 3 in both mining and leatherworking. As Masaru went dead silent, Hera revealed the truth. In his past life, he was a master carpenter who conquered both wood and stone. The rewards kept flooding in, handing him an item box and the blacksmithing skill. Then came general crafting and even the gift of healing magic. The goddesses stared in total horror, nearly weeping because every single god-tier skill he pulled was stuck at the lowest possible level. Finally, a map ability appeared, leaving Victinius completely speechless and stunned. Hera tried to play it cool, claiming these were perfect for a carpenter. But Masaru noticed both goddesses were sweating bullets. They panicked, declared the ceremony over, and kicked him into the new world, cutting back to the present where Victinius is jamming a finger in his face for ignoring her. She screamed that these blessing tickets are forged from raw divine power and are insanely rare, usually only appearing when a god and a human have a child. He's got 10 of them, so if he dares to die now, she'll never forgive him. Masaru argued that he was forced to fight, but Victinius snapped that he needed to be way more careful. She demanded to know why he was acting like he was still on Earth, worrying about preserving accident sites while his life was on the line. In this brutal world, it's kill or be killed. And if he wants to survive, he has to find his courage and strike without a single shred of hesitation. She shoves the goblin's weapon into his hands, demanding he use it. And while Masaru is hesitant, he agrees to test its power once Victinius explains he just needs to visualize his status screen. As the numbers appear before his eyes, Victinius asks if it's finally clicked. This is a world where grinding XP is the only way to survive. She brushes off the goblin attack as a brutal first lesson, and prepares to warp him to the nearest village, but Masaru shouts for her to wait, desperate to find the girl who might be looking for him, even though Victinius insists no humans should be anywhere near this place. Masaru explains she wasn't human at all. She had long bunny ears, and as Victinius panics and tries to force him into a human village, a mysterious finger taps her on the shoulder, making her freeze in pure terror. It's Hera! And a trembling Victinius tries to back away, but Hera grabs her arm with a terrifyingly calm smile and asks if she has anything else she'd like to say. Victinius squeaks out that Masaru is free to live his own life now before she's suddenly dragged away into the shadows. Moments later, a group of rabbit folk emerges from the trees, and the girl from before sprints straight toward Masaru with a look of pure joy. She throws her arms around him, overjoyed that he's alive, while the guards step forward to thank him for saving little May before asking if that vicious goblin managed to escape. Masaru just shakes his head and points to the nearby clearing where the beast lies dead, leaving the guards absolutely floored that he took down a massive hobgoblin all by himself. Masaru plays it cool, claiming he just dodged and the clumsy oaf tripped and cracked its skull on a rock, leaving the entire group staring at him in dead silence. They don't know whether to believe this ridiculous story or not, so a nervous Masaru breaks the tension by asking if he can stay in their village. "We can talk as we walk," one guard says, while another insists they'd be honored to welcome him, sending a massive wave of relief crashing over Masaru. They can't stop praising him for risking everything to save May from that monster, showing him nothing but pure, heartfelt gratitude. They invite him to meet their village chief, and as Masaru turns to thank May, she giggles and points out that he still hasn't even told her his name. She formally introduces herself as May, leaning in with a smile as she waits for him to finally reveal who he is. Her formal vibe piqued Masaru's curiosity, and when she caught him staring, he brushed it off with a quick, nervous grin. He stepped forward and finally gave her his name. Narumi Masaru. He told her to drop the formalities and just call him Masaru. As their hands met, he knew the road ahead was a total mystery. But finally, his life of absolute freedom was beginning. Masaru flashed back to his old life, a 36-year-old country guy just heading home, until everything changed in a heartbeat. Out of nowhere, a literal goddess snatched him away from his world. She played God with his fate, dropping him into a strange land with 11 skills, but none of them were meant for combat, leaving him in total chaos. The second he arrived, a vicious goblin lunged straight for his throat. He barely escaped with his life, and now he's following May and her crew to the gates of the rabbit village. Using his map skill to lead the way, May proudly declared that this humble place was their home. As Masaru stepped inside, every eye in the village was glued to him, burning with intense curiosity. A guard told him there were only about 100 people here, and May explained how they all survive by looking out for one another. She told him to consider them his new family, and Masaru felt a massive wave of genuine gratitude. He noticed the homes were just primitive tents lashed together with rope, looking exactly like the ancient Yayoi era of Japan. When he asked if the place was new, the guard revealed they'd only been there 2 years. It was clear these people were fighting a desperate battle to survive. Someone else pipes up, asking if he can meet the village chief this very second. Masaru agrees, and the moment he steps into the chief's home, the old man admits he thought the rumors were a total lie, until he saw Masaru standing right there. Masaru offers his blade to the village, and while the people drown him in gratitude, he humbly claims he'd be lost in the woods without them. But the chief isn't hearing it. He threw his life on the line to save May, earning him a hero's welcome into their home. Then comes the shocker. The chief tells Masaru he'll be moving right into May's house. Masaru hesitates, but the chief reveals May's father was slaughtered by a monster, leaving her mother desperate for help. Still, Masaru worries if a young girl really wants a stranger around. But the moment he looks at her, she beams a smile and says she's more than happy to have him. Masaru gives her a gentle head pat, thanking her for her kindness, and though the chief orders him to rest, Masaru vows to repay their hospitality no matter what. The chief tells him to relax and just contribute whenever he's ready. As Masaru heads out, his mind is spinning with every crazy thing that's happened so far. Suddenly, a realization hits him like a lightning bolt. One of his skills is the key to everything. He turns to the chief and declares that he can transform this entire village into something legendary. He's oozing confidence, but the chief and the villagers are left completely stunned and confused. Masaru explains he can revolutionize their entire way of life, but the chief stops him right there. If a total stranger starts shouting about rebuilding the whole town, it's going to spark a massive panic. He laid out the cold logic and asked if Masaru understood, and Masaru nodded, even if he wasn't the best at reading the room. He was desperate to protect everyone, haunted by the fact that his slow reactions had almost cost the kids and the elderly their lives. He vowed to build a safe haven in this village, knowing that if he sat back now, the guilt would eat him alive. He was going to become the hero they needed. He flashed back to all those times his boss chewed him out, realizing those harsh lessons were exactly what taught him how to own his mistakes. Even if he didn't know the limits of his power, he was ready to give his all for this village, begging the chief for a chance to prove himself. He knew people might push back, but he believed pure intentions could change the world. And seeing that fire, the chief felt a surge of hope, realizing Masaru was drawing strength from his old life at the countryside home center. The chief looked him in the eye and asked, "What's the first move?" Masaru didn't hesitate. He was starting right now. The chief saw that burning resolve in his eyes and gave him the green light, trusting that Masaru would do whatever it took for the village's survival before the young man thanked him and bolted out the door. Deep in the woods, Masaru started gathering supplies while his mind raced. It was time to finally figure out what his skills were actually capable of. He remembered that slot machine gamble had completely warped his crafting abilities, giving him powers he didn't even recognize. He had to sort through his arsenal and figure out which of these insane new skills he could actually put to the test. He triggered his appraisal skill on a basic knife, and man, the stats he saw were absolutely mind-blowing. This was May's blade, so he couldn't afford to snap it, but he realized just how broken these skills were. They let him master anything without a single second of training. Next up was the cutting skill, and he decided to test its lethality on a massive tree nearby. In a total blur, the trunk snapped like a toothpick and came crashing down right toward his head. He lunged out of the way just in time, his heart hammering as he realized how close he came to being crushed. That was a near-death experience, and he saw that a single use of the skill had already devoured a massive chunk of his 213 MP. But the power was simple enough to master. He just needed to level up to stop the drain. Next, he unleashed his building skill and realized he could literally manipulate. He can shape solid stone with his bare hands, and with a single thought, a jagged rock snaps into a flawless cube. It worked perfectly. Now he sets his sights on the massive tree he just felled, eager to see if his skills can manipulate the raw timber. This wood is the key. He needs it to build his ultimate base. But there's a massive problem. Letting wood dry naturally is a grueling process that usually takes over 6 months. Some trees take years to cure, but Masaru has a wild idea. Can he use his powers to bypass time and dry the wood instantly? He's right on the verge of testing this insane theory when someone interrupts. May suddenly appears, calling out that dinner is ready and it's time to head back. Masaru completely collapses onto a fallen log, gasping for air while insisting he's totally fine. He tries to play it cool, but May is absolutely horrified. She screams that he looks even worse than after his bloody battle with the goblin. She's desperate to know what happened, and that's when it hits him. He's suffering from massive mana depletion, a lethal state he's only ever read about in books. He's thrilled he finished the job. But May grabs his arm and drags him away as he burns with embarrassment over his pathetic state. They limp back to the village together, where May's mother is waiting to welcome them with open arms. Masaru offers a polite greeting, but Ruru tells him to drop the formalities just as May brags that this hero saved her life from a terrifying hobgoblin. Ruru promises their home is a safe haven from the elements and tells Masaru to treat it like his own, leaving him deeply moved by her kindness. As they sit down to feast, Masaru realizes that without these rabbit people, he'd be completely lost in this dangerous new world. This world was his new home now, and he was ready to start over. He didn't know his limits yet, but he was prepared to give it everything he had, starting first thing tomorrow morning. It was time to kick the village improvement plan into high gear. At sunrise, the hammers started swinging, and Masaru headed straight for the village gates, where a curious guard stopped him to check in. Masaru nodded, declaring that their absolute top priority was beefing up that flimsy perimeter fence. One worker shouted that the chief already filled them in on the massive upgrades, while another guy, who had been buzzing with energy since dawn, jumped in to ask why the fence was first on the list. Masaru's answer was simple: safety first, because when the monsters strike, this village needs to stand tall. He wasn't just fixing wood. He wanted to anchor the entire wall with a massive stone foundation. He pointed to the nearby cliffs, explaining they had an endless supply of rock to turn that fence into an unbreakable fortress. The crew was hyped, but one worker realized the fence was huge, and they didn't have the muscle to haul that much stone. Masaru just grinned and told him to relax. He and May had already finished the heavy lifting earlier that morning. Suddenly, he tapped into his item box and unleashed a mountain of stone, leaving the workers completely speechless. They stared in awe at his legendary storage skill, even though it was supposed to be a common ability. As the workers whispered about his mysterious methods, Masaru felt a bit let down. Was this skill really that rare? It felt like a basic tool when he first grabbed it. He made a mental note to keep his powers low-key from now on, then ordered the men to start hauling the boulders to the site. But just as they started heaving the rocks, Masaru shouted for them to freeze. He warned them that stacking rocks blindly was a recipe for disaster. As the workers scratched their heads over the right technique, Masaru decided it was time for a little trial and error. He realized they had a massive pile of smaller stones just waiting to be used. He threw together a quick sample wall, proving that a weak build would shatter under the slightest pressure. The real secret, he explained, was what happened behind the surface. He revealed that every tiny stone and every single gap was part of the master plan, perfectly aligned to create an impenetrable shield. This turns the wall into an absolute fortress, making it virtually impossible to knock down. The villagers wonder if just stacking rocks is enough, but Masaru warns them. If the enemy's power grows, they'll need pebbles to survive the onslaught. He reveals the secret. Massive boulders on the outside and pebbles packed within let the rain flow right through without weakening the structure. This keeps the defense rock solid even in a downpour, proving that those tiny pebbles are actually the ultimate game changer. It's a simple trick with massive results, and he orders them to seal every single gap before officially recruiting them for his master construction plan. A group of women approach him in total awe, desperate to know how he's dreaming up these genius strategies on the fly. Masaru plays it cool, telling them he's happy to share since they're all in this together. Plus, he's already been hunting for ways to upgrade their kitchen game. He realizes they're only cooking over open flames, so he promises to build a high-tech furnace, and the moment they hear that, their eyes light up with pure desperation. Masaru realizes this isn't a request. It's a demand from the true demons of the kitchen, and he knows he better not get on their bad side. He quickly reassures them that he's using top-tier stone for the furnace, so there's absolutely nothing to worry about. They're absolutely thrilled, finally realizing that Masaru actually understands the brutal struggle of feeding a whole village. Masaru leads the crew to the field to begin construction, taking on the heavy lifting himself while asking the ladies if they're ready to back him up. They shout their approval, telling him to leave the rest to them, as Masaru reveals they need way more than just rocks to pull this off. He lists off the secret ingredients: clay, dry grass, and sand. He explains that this cocktail of materials creates a bond far stronger than stone alone, revealing that mixing them into the clay creates an indestructible armor once it sets. Seeing the doubt lingering on their faces, Masaru tasks Mei with guiding the group and putting their minds at ease. He tells them to speak up without fear, promising to move mountains to help them with whatever they need. When the villagers ask for proper silverware and furniture for the whole tribe, Masaru ignores his draining mana and decides to craft it all himself. He gives them his word. It'll take a few days of hard work, but he's going to make it a reality. He starts dreaming of a massive sheltered dining hall for the village, but realizes the women are staring at him in total shock. They're just blown away, admitting they've never seen anyone with such incredible building talent and knowledge. Masaru brushes it off as stuff from his old life, but now they're dying to know what kind of legendary job he used to have. Believe it or not, he was just a regular guy working at a rural home improvement store. He rallies the crowd, telling them that to build this future, he's going to need every single person to give it their all. Masaru dives straight into the heavy lifting, and the entire village follows his lead like a well-oiled machine. He even goes the extra mile, handcrafting bows and cutlery for every single villager. They grind well into the night, and during dinner the girls are absolutely mesmerized by Masaru's mysterious chopstick skills. These strange tools are a total mystery to them, but as the sun rises, the construction continues at a breakneck pace. Finally, the massive stone-reinforced fence is finished, and the village erupts into a massive roar of pride and joy. By the time dinner rolls around, the new gathering hall is fully decked out with tables, chairs, and everything they need. A woman rushes up to Masaru, praising the rock-solid furnace and the incredible new gathering hall. Masaru beams with pride seeing the village thrive, though he notices his handmade chopsticks are a hit while the forks are gathering dust, until the chief suddenly shouts his name. The chief bows deeply, pouring out his heart to thank Masaru for saving their entire way of life. Suddenly, Mei lunges forward and pulls Masaru into a massive hug. She whispers that he's a total genius, and that their wild plan worked perfectly. Masaru is glowing with pure joy, but far away, powerful eyes are watching his every move. Hera and Victinius gaze at a massive screen, with Hera scoffing that the boy is succeeding without them, and that Victinius's interference was totally overkill. Victinius stands her ground, but Hera snaps back, calling her stubborn for gifting Masaru 11 insane skills, more than enough to survive anything. With his powers skyrocketing, Masaru has become an anomaly that shouldn't even exist, and Hera admits she saw the same terrifying truth at Zeus's palace. Hera's reluctant to praise him, but Victinius is done with 4 centuries of a boring, stagnant world. She's ready for a revolution. To blow this world wide open, they need Masaru to be the ultimate detonator. Back at the village, the people surround Masaru, showering him with endless love and gratitude. They swear their new peaceful life is all thanks to him. But Masaru's already plotting his next big upgrade. He's thinking about fortifying the homes while the chief jokes there'll be a massive city soon. Masaru almost brings up building toilets, but catches himself just in time. Even in a world of magic, hygiene matters, but he pivots quickly to ask the locals about the mysterious slimes lurking nearby. The crowd froze in shock, staring at him like he'd lost his mind, while Mei warned that those slimes were acid-spitting nightmares. Luckily, the chief confirmed they were stuck at the bottom of the cliff. Masaru flashed a relieved grin because that was exactly what he needed to hear. But now he faced an even bigger challenge: teaching these people about basic hygiene. He needed to build a proper sanitation system using sand and soil, but he knew regular cement just wouldn't cut it for this job. He remembered watching people craft it from scratch with gravel, and suddenly a light bulb went off. He blurted out, "Is there an ocean nearby?" The room went dead silent as everyone stared at him in total confusion, until Mei finally choked out that yes, an ocean did exist, but there was a dark catch. Every single member of the rabbit tribe had been forced to abandon that place in terror. Masaru was completely baffled, unable to wrap his head around why anyone would ever run away from the sea. The chief revealed the heartbreaking truth. Their ancestral home was located 10 long days away in the west. They once lived there in peace, until ruthless humans arrived and hunted them right out of their own land. Masaru's heart sank as his worst fears were confirmed. This world was just as cruel and unforgiving as he'd imagined. Even after all that trauma, they still welcomed a human like him with open arms, leaving him feeling like a total jerk for bringing up such painful memories. But he couldn't just give up. He was determined to save them, and that meant he had to get his hands on those ocean materials no matter what. Knowing the ocean was a place of nightmares for the tribe, he refused to drag them back into that trauma. He made the ultimate choice. He was going to brave the journey entirely alone. The tribe was absolutely floored by his guts. And as dawn broke the next morning, Masaru geared up to head out into the unknown. Masaru binds Mei tightly with ropes, scolding her because he already warned her 1,000 times to stay back. She bursts into tears, sobbing that she just wants to be by his side, but a stunned Masaru demands to know if she'd really abandon her mother when she can't even slay a single lowly goblin. Mei snaps right back, reminding him that he only survived his own goblin fight because the monsters literally tripped over their own feet. That truth hits Masaru like a ton of bricks. But the chief steps in to back him up, warning Mei that this journey is a death sentence for someone as weak as her, forcing Masaru to joke that the old man is still as stubborn as ever. The chief ignores the jab and hands Masaru a mysterious gift along with a heavy request, urging him to put it on immediately. It's a sturdy set of armor, and the chief tasks him with a vital mission. Find any human settlements and tell them the rabbit tribe is still alive and well. Masaru swears to deliver the message while secretly vowing to uncover the dark truth of this land, telling the tribe to keep their expectations low for whatever loot he might bring back. He gives Mei one last look, telling her to be a good girl and stay safe as he disappears into the distance, leaving her weeping behind him. After 4 grueling days of fighting off wild beasts, Masaru hits level 10 and finally tracks his way to the breathtaking ocean shore, his map skill guiding him through every twist and turn of this dangerous new world. His mind drifts back to yesterday's chaos, when a group of ruthless bandits ambushed a defenseless carriage right before his eyes. He unsheathed his blade to strike, only to realize he was completely outnumbered by the thugs. But despite the overwhelming odds, he tore through the entire pack using nothing but his trusty goblin weapon. He's shocked by how pathetic they were, disgusted that such weaklings would ever think they had the right to prey on the innocent. Even so, his kindness wins out, and he actually casts healing magic on his fallen enemies. Because at the end of the day, Masaru just doesn't have the heart to take a human life. He didn't leave them with a dime, scavenging every single potion, herb, and blade they had. Hey, they gotta keep their lives, right? In his book, that's a total bargain. As he trekked along the coast, a signal suddenly pinged. There was a seaside town just over the horizon. This was the legendary sanctuary where the Rabbit clan once thrived. He quickly threw on an adventurer's disguise, but as he neared the city, he saw a massive tower standing hollow and scarred by vicious beast attacks. The streets were crawling with a massive horde of goblins, leaving Masaru completely blindsided. He joked to himself that these monsters must be working overtime, and if they were, there was no way they'd let him clock out alive. The green tide surged toward him, and he braced for the impact. These pests hunted in packs, and their overwhelming numbers were a death sentence, so he unsheathed his stolen bandit blade and prepared for war. He lacked flashy magic or ultimate abilities, but he had something better. Raw swordsmanship that didn't come from any system slot. It was pure muscle memory from his childhood kendo days, and he couldn't help but wonder if the world system recognized his real-life training. With a lightning-fast flick of his wrist, he delivered a perfect strike. He held back just enough to avoid a bloodbath, but just as he found his rhythm, disaster struck. A hulking, titan-sized goblin came thundering out, mounted atop a monstrous, raging wild boar. Masaru knew instantly this was the village boss, and he had no idea how he'd survive a beast like this. The monstrous beast lunges forward, charging at him with relentless fury. Its speed is absolutely insane. Masaru barely dodges the onslaught, realizing his blade can't even touch the goblin rider from this distance. He has no choice. He has to take down that massive boar first. But at these breakneck speeds, one tiny slip-up means losing a limb. This isn't a fight. It's a high-speed collision waiting to happen. Suddenly, a genius plan hits him. If this beast is moving like a runaway freight train, there's no way it can stop on a dime. He reaches into his item box, rips out a massive log, and swings it with bone-shattering force, slamming the goblin right off its mount. The second that goblin boss hits the dirt, Masaru lunges forward and ends its life with one brutal final blow. The remaining goblins freeze in terror before scattering like rats. Masaru wonders if they're running for help, But before he can even blink, a lethal rain of arrows screams from the sky, wiping out the retreating monsters in an instant. Masaru spins around to find a knight on horseback closing in. It's the vice captain of the Grados kingdom's army, and he demands to know exactly who Masaru is. Masaru stands there stunned as the knight barks orders at him. But a seasoned commander steps in to cool things down. This is General Cook, and he apologizes for his subordinate's attitude, explaining they're here on a mission to wipe out the goblin threat. But they're too late to the party. Realizing Masaru took down the entire horde alone, the general offers his sincere thanks for the incredible assist. Masaru plays it cool, claiming he was just out gathering resources. But internally, his mind is racing. If these soldiers are here, then the kingdom officially claims this territory. This is his shot to find out the truth about the rabbit village. But before he can ask, another man storms up to General Cook, demanding why he's wasting time talking to a total stranger. Cook reveals that a deadly goblin rider was reported in the area, leaving the other man speechless. He admits that even their elite forces haven't been able to take down a monster that dangerous. The knights swarm Masaru with a barrage of questions, demanding to know his age, his job, and if he's even got identification. He's totally overwhelmed until Cook steps in and shuts the interrogation down. Cook is so blown away by Masaru's raw power that he offers him a spot in the Knights right then and there. It's like a classic manga trope. The hero gets scouted the second he shows off his skills. But Masaru isn't interested and turns him down flat, declaring that he's on a mission of his own and nothing will stand in his way. Cook just beams with respect, slapping Masaru's shoulder and praising him for having a soul of iron that can't be bought with gold, fame, or women. Scanning the ghost town, Masaru asks where the hell everyone is, so Cook barks an order for his men to hunt down the hiding villagers. Masaru insists they deal with the piles of corpses immediately, leaving Cook wondering what kind of plan this stranger has cooked up. He warns that those rotting bodies will lure in predators and spread a deadly plague, so they need to burn and bury them now. Impressed by his logic, Cook commands his knights to start hauling the dead. While they work, Masaru wonders if these soldiers are just mindless puppets, all while scouting out an empty lot between two houses to dump the goblin remains. Meanwhile, Hera and Victinias are glued to their monitors, watching the scene unfold in absolute shock. Victinias is losing her mind and wants to confront Masaru directly, but Hera tells her to back off and keep watching. She knows those goblins were weak, but there is no way a normal human should have survived a slaughter led by a lethal goblin rider. Hera digs into his records and discovers he was a kendo beast and a state-level boxer. But Victinias realizes something is terrifyingly off with the body Zeus gave him. A dark thought creeps into her mind. Did the entire summoning process glitch out? She remembers his body acting strange from day one. But Victinias is clearly keeping a massive secret, and the silence is deafening. Hera finally snaps and screams at her to wake up to the danger, only for Victinias to drop a bombshell. Masaru might be a living detonator waiting to explode. The entire world hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of total annihilation. A massive crowd swarmed the heroes, weeping with joy now that peace had finally returned to their home. Cook marched up to Chief Garv to celebrate their survival. But when the chief tried to thank the knights, Cook dropped a bombshell. The knights didn't kill those goblins. Masaru wiped them out all on his own. He told Garv to forget the official knight contract and give Masaru a reward worthy of a true legend instead. A bashful Masaru tried to play it cool, but Cook shut him down, insisting that since Masaru saved every single life without a single casualty, he deserved every bit of it. Garv looked at the ruins of his village and sighed, admitting Masaru was their savior, but they were too broke to pay up. He even tried to pass the bill back to Cook. Seeing the chief on the verge of tears, Masaru waved off the money and asked for something shockingly simple. Just some water jugs and a wooden box to gather seashells and seawater. Cook was baffled why a hero would want junk, but when Masaru cryptically mentioned building a dirt wall, Cook ordered the chief to hand over the goods immediately. Garv hesitated, claiming the boxes were fine, but the jugs were life-or-death tools they absolutely needed to haul water from the sea. To kill the tension, Masaru decided to drop a truth bomb that would change everything. He looked Garv in the eye and revealed the secret. They didn't need the jugs because there was already a hidden well right next to the garden. Garv went pale and lunged for Masaru's collar, screaming to know how he found out. But the knights were listening, and they were furious that the chief had been hiding a water source while his people starved. As the knights pinned Garv down to drag him away, a crazed villager suddenly lunged out of the crowd and snatched Masaru's hand. Pure rage exploded from the mob as they screamed at Masaru for ruining their lives, and before he could even defend himself, a man swung a weapon at his head, howling that Masaru was a traitor for exposing their secret. Masaru's instincts kicked in as he floored the attacker with a single punch, but he looked up to see a bloodthirsty mob surrounding him just as the knights dragged the bound chief back into view. They arrived to find Masaru standing over the defeated villagers, leaving Cook absolutely speechless. Masaru shrugs it off, claiming the locals jumped him but were weaker than goblins, sending Cook into a frantic rage as he realizes the villagers tried to murder Masaru to bury their dark secret. Coldly, Masaru stares Cook down and demands, "So, what's your next move?" Cook growls that for a crime like this, hiding the well and attempted murder, the penalty is usually a swift execution, or worse, being sold off into a life of brutal slavery. But Masaru just flashes a chilling smile and tells them to hold on, offering a deal that Cook can't ignore. If they play their cards right, he's willing to let this whole incident slide. No blood, no punishment, just a clean slate. Cook has no choice but to agree since Masaru was the one they tried to kill. Garv demands to know the price, and Masaru reveals he just wants answers. If they talk, he might even do them a favor. Cook is left guessing what Masaru's true game is as the hero plots his first move. Then he drops a bombshell. What really happened to the rabbit people who lived here 2 years ago? The room goes dead silent. Garv loses his mind, barking at the knights to stop this interrogation, while Masaru watches him spiral into a frantic, desperate rage. Suddenly, the knight Eldam steps forward and commands everyone to shut their mouths. Masaru is stunned. Why is a royal knight protecting this chief? Eldam demands to know why he's digging up the past, but Masaru stands his ground, declaring that he's doing this for the people who still believe in him. Eldam narrows his eyes, realizing Masaru is definitely talking about the missing rabbit tribe. That's when it hits him. The knights are in on the secret too. Eldam prepares to speak, and the tension is through the roof. He showed a flicker of respect, admitting he might actually lose this fight. But he wasn't backing down. He reveals the nightmare began 5 years ago, when the former king launched a brutal campaign to swallow up every neighboring nation. This very village was one of his targets, where Garvin fought a bloody war and claimed a cold-blooded victory. The rabbit folk were driven from their homes as their land was stolen, and Garv was installed as the new puppet leader. The truth hits Masaru like a truck. It wasn't pirates, but human invaders who stole this land and dragged the survivors off into chains. It dawns on Masaru that the rabbit folk are still drowning in grief for their stolen brothers and sisters. Pure rage boils over as Masaru looms over Eldam, barking an order to set every single prisoner free this instant. Cook tries to play peacekeeper, but Masaru snaps back, threatening to crush them all and toss Cook into the slave pits himself. Masaru's voice thunders through the air, screaming that if the law allows for slavery, then the law is absolute garbage. He grills them on how they can justify kidnapping anyone they want, while Cook desperately pleads that his hands are tied by the rules. "Don't lie to me!" Masaru roars, labeling them nothing but bloodthirsty invaders who have no right to preach about justice. The entire room goes deathly silent as Masaru turns his back on them, ready to walk away. He offers a cold apology for the outburst, leaving them with an ultimatum. Decide whose side you're really on. But just as he's stepping out, a magical portal rips open and Victinia suddenly manifests. She winds up and slaps him across the face, shouting that he's supposed to be saving the world, not picking fights. She screams at him, demanding to know why he's picking fights. Does he really want to tear this kingdom apart just to see her suffer? Does he hate her that much? Masaru snaps back, denying everything. He reminds her she dragged him here against his will, robbing him of the chance to finally meet his true love. May begs him to stay out of trouble and hide, but Masaru isn't having it. He mocks her, asking if she actually thinks he's crazy enough to challenge an entire army alone. "No, you can't!" May shrieks. But suddenly, Masaru pauses and tells her to wait. He feels something strange surging through his veins and demands to know what's happening to him. Her answer is terrifyingly simple. In plain English, he now has the power to crush an entire army single-handedly. Victinius reveals the truth about the spirit class. Masaru is stunned to learn he's now on the same level as legendary beings made of pure magic, a feat that's absolutely insane. She explains that he'll never run out of breath. His magic control is now god tier, and his physical strength has soared past human limits. Reality hits Masaru like a freight train as he realizes he's already feeling this monstrous power taking over. But Victinius isn't done. She reveals that Masaru is still just at a low level. As his mana grows, his recovery and stats will skyrocket. She then offers a heartfelt apology for her reckless actions that put him in this mess. She confesses she only vanished to protect him, and the next morning, Cook arrives with a squad of knights to find Masaru. One look at their faces tells Masaru they've agreed to free the prisoners. Cook confirms the villagers gave in, but Masaru warns him, freeing every single beast folk won't be this easy everywhere else. Forget the big cities for a second. Masaru demands a full report on every beast folk in the nearby villages, down to their exact numbers and tribes. Cook reveals the city archives hold all the answers, so Masaru prepares to hunt down the leaders. Cook looks uneasy, but he admits it's just a massive relief to see Masaru finally cooling his red-hot temper. Cook presses him on what happened the previous night, but Masaru plays it cool, saying he's just relieved the talks went smooth, leaving Cook completely baffled. Masaru casually mentions that if the deal had failed, he was ready to settle things with his fists, sending the horrified knights into a total panic. Cook reminds him they're trying to avoid a bloodbath, not start one, and orders him into the carriage as they race toward the city. As they travel, Masaru's mind races with questions about their destination, until Cook reveals they're heading to the legendary City of Knights. This massive stronghold serves as the ultimate base for the Greta Kingdom's elite coastal warriors. Upon arrival, Masaru notes the impressive, sturdy buildings, but Cook isn't sure if he's being complimented, boasting that while it's no fortress, any invader would face a living nightmare trying to breach these walls. It's a massive upgrade from a tiny fishing village, but the disgusting lack of hygiene makes Masaru want to gag. Still, he flashes a mysterious smile and hints that he might have a plan to liberate the beast folk. That gentle smile sends a chill through the air like a bad omen, but Cook ignores it, warning Masaru he needs his guild card ready for a mandatory security check before meeting the chief. But the moment he hears guild card, Masaru starts sweating bullets. They rush to the Adventurers Guild where Cook absolutely loses his cool, demanding to know if Masaru is some lazy bum who skipped his mandatory registration at age 12. Masaru thinks he's toast, but Cook's own confusion actually saves his skin. The receptionist calls him over and tells him to place his hand on a glowing magical device. The second Masaru touches the artifact, it erupts with a blinding divine light that catches him completely off guard. It starts forging a brand new card instantly. The lady explains this is holy tech gifted by the gods, and warns him that forgery is a grave crime punishable by the full force of the law. She reassures him his secrets are safe, but the card will still track his name, rank, and any criminal record. And as long as he's alive, his private data is locked tight. Masaru is seriously impressed by the high-tech privacy as he finally holds his official guild card in his hands. Suddenly, a guy nearby notices the commotion and demands Masaru show his card, shouting that he has to reveal every bit of his info to pass inspection. Masaru hesitates, wondering if just one touch will expose his entire secret status to the world. He taps it, and boom! The screen flares to life, looking exactly like a divine interface created by a literal god. The surrounding crowd is frozen in absolute jaw-dropping shock. They can't even find the words to speak, while a panicked Masaru tries to hide his insane skill list and play it off as a mistake. But Cook isn't buying the act for a second. Eldam demands to know how anyone could have more than 2 skills, while Cook stares in disbelief at the 5 legendary titles Masaru is casually rocking. Masaru yells at them to just forget what they saw, arguing that since he's clearly not a spy, they should just look the other way and keep their mouths shut. Eldam warns that nobody would even believe their story anyway, so Cook calls an emergency huddle to cook the books and make sure their official report doesn't get them all executed. They reach the assembly hall where a lady confirms they've been expecting Masaru and ushers them straight into the inner sanctum. As they walk, a terrified Cook admits they barely survived that mess, while Masaru prepares to meet the city's legendary knight leader. An impossible meeting granted only because Masaru is so damn interesting. He steps into the room and finds himself face to face with the city's ultimate power player, Lancelot. The ruler stands tall and introduces himself with an air of absolute command. Masaru instantly feels a crushing aura radiating from Lancelot, realizing this negotiation is going to be way more dangerous than he ever imagined. Masaru tries to be polite, but Lancelot shuts him down instantly, demanding they stop wasting time and get straight to the deal for the beast folks' freedom. Everything hinges on what Masaru is willing to trade for their lives, but it looks like he has no intention of offering up gold or goods. Lancelot leaned in, dying to see what Masaru brought to the table, but Masaru realized this guy was way sharper and more calculated than he expected. This was going to be a nightmare. He knew one wrong move or lie would end in disaster, so he had to be brutally honest. Lancelot claimed this was the biggest deal in the city's history. And with a deep breath, Masaru offered up the only thing he had, his knowledge. The room fell silent with confusion, but Masaru doubled down, explaining he could slash the death rate, revolutionize food supplies, and skyrocket the town's entire quality of life. Minds were blown, and Masaru immediately pointed to their horse carriages as the first thing he'd completely overhaul. He called out how much those carriages rattled and shook, and he planned to introduce springs, a game-changing mechanism to absorb shocks that this world had never even seen. Someone scoffed, asking if he could really stop the shaking. And while Masaru promised it wouldn't be perfect, it would be a hell of a lot smoother than their current junk. But before he could reveal his next secret, a man behind Lancelot cut him off. Lancelot admitted the city desperately needed exactly what Masaru was pitching, and if it actually worked, the results would be legendary. But there was a catch. He couldn't just trust a stranger blindly, and he wasn't about to bet everything on words alone. It was a tempting offer for a small village, but in this city, Masaru was stuck there until he proved his worth, leading Masaru to wonder if he was being drafted into the knighthood. Lancelot reminded him he'd already turned that down, and while losing his raw power sucked, they respected his choice. But then, he dropped the real bombshell. Until Masaru produced results, the beast folk were staying behind bars, and if he failed, he'd be trapped there until he succeeded or died trying. He wasn't just betting his brain. He was gambling with his entire future, and when Masaru agreed without a second thought, the whole room gasped in shock. Lancelot commanded him to fix the city's sanitation and carriages first, promising that the moment he saw even a shred of progress, the beast folk would be set free. Masaru locked in as Lancelot offered a secretary for help, but Masaru turned it down, claiming the deal was already better than he hoped, until Lancelot revealed Masaru had it all wrong. By signing this deal, Lancelot was basically getting a free pass to wipe out any rebellious beast folk while still milking Masaru for every bit of his world-changing knowledge. Lancelot spat at the idea of calling this plague-ridden invasion a war. And in that moment, Masaru realized this leader actually had a heart of gold. Lancelot promised to round up the scattered beast folk, but warned that the real nightmare would be the angry mobs opposing their freedom. So he turned to Masaru, desperate for a solution. Masaru flashed a wicked, bone-chilling grin and asked a simple question. This is the City of Knights, right? So why not settle this the old-fashioned way, with a duel? He threw down the gauntlet, declaring he'd crush anyone who dared to stand in his way, and once they lost, they'd have to shut their mouths forever. Lancelot leaped to his feet, ecstatic at the thought of such a wild spectacle, though he knew plenty of stubborn fools would still refuse to back down. He snatched up a blade, declaring that if Masaru could take down the strongest warrior in the city, no one could argue. And suddenly, Masaru realized Lancelot wasn't talking about some random orc. He was challenging Masaru to a duel right then and there. Lancelot's eyes ignited with the hunger of a total battle junkie. But Masaru tried to back out, terrified he'd accidentally hospitalized the city's leader. Lancelot laughed, asking if Masaru really thought he'd win, and immediately ordered the training grounds prepped. But Masaru pivoted back to business, demanding a place to start his urgent meeting right now. He dropped the bombshell. It was time for a mandatory high-stakes lecture on basic hygiene. Lancelot was stunned, but Masaru was dead serious. He was going to school these warriors on why filth was their true enemy and how to fix their disgusting habits. The knights looked completely lost, but Masaru didn't blink, forcing the confused soldiers to scramble and round up their smartest men for the class. Masaru warned that anyone who ditched would face a brutal makeup session, staring down the reluctant high-ranking officers until Lancelot chuckled and gave him full authority over the whole operation. But Masaru wasn't finished. He pointed right at Lancelot and told him he was required to attend too. With the knights gathered, Masaru laid it out straight. The city's biggest threat wasn't an army. It was their own filthy living conditions. He began drilling them on the life-saving basics, boiling every drop of water, scrubbing their hands raw, and keeping their gear spotless. The knights' faces twisted with annoyance, thinking Masaru's advice was a total joke. He realized he was teaching basics even a child would know, yet these elite warriors were completely clueless. Even Lancelot was stunned by the sudden lecture, skeptically asking if these simple tricks could actually change the world. Masaru fired back, explaining that basic hygiene could save everyone from infants to the elderly, potentially wiping out the plague for good. He wasn't a doctor, but he was ready to drop every ounce of knowledge he had to save lives. Lancelot snapped, demanding to know where this kid got his confidence. He warned that while the capital was safe for now, the plague was so lethal that even the bravest scholars were too terrified to study it. Since info on the disease was worth its weight in gold, Lancelot felt like they were robbing Masaru blind. He promised the knights full support, within reason, leaving Masaru thinking this lopsided deal actually worked perfectly in his favor. Lancelot nodded, admitting that leaving a debt unpaid was a stain on their professional honor. Masaru didn't hold back, telling them straight up that there was one big favor he needed right now. He demanded access to the smithy by sunrise to overhaul their horse carriages and kick off a series of wild experiments. Lancelot gave the green light and immediately started making the arrangements. He warned that while the forge was solid, they didn't have a single master smith left since the capital had snatched them all up. And when Masaru finally stepped inside, his jaw hit the floor. Mountains of wasted resources were rotting in every single corner. It was a total disaster zone, so Masaru roared for every available man to drop what they were doing and get to work. He commanded a full inventory by sunset, barking that this pathetic mess didn't even deserve to be called a workshop. A confused Lancelot asked what an inventory even was, so Masaru broke it down. He needed a precise list of every scrap of metal and wood they owned. Lancelot caught on, demanding a report on every broken tool and rusted part, but then he tried to halt the cleanup, arguing that, as a military unit, they should have some standards, but that just made Masaru's blood boil. He screamed in pure frustration, demanding to know why this place was a disorganized, dust-covered nightmare. To a former home center pro like Masaru, this level of mess was an absolute insult. Back in his old life, they juggled tens of thousands of items, and a single tiny mistake meant hours of agonizing searching. He looked Lancelot dead in the eye and declared he was taking over the project, demanding a crew to help him crush this chaos. It was time to show these people the true, overwhelming power of professional inventory management. The second the workers arrived, Masaru hit the ground running, barking out orders and scribbling down a master plan. He whipped the team into shape, micromanaging exactly how every single piece of gear was sorted, recorded, and stacked. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the entire workshop had undergone a jaw-dropping transformation. Every single item was perfectly polished, labeled, and organized with surgical precision. But as he inspected the hoard, he hit a wall. He knew copper, but stuff like black steel and crimson ore were straight out of a fantasy nightmare. Baffled by the mountain of supplies, he demanded to know how the city's bank account wasn't already dead from all this waste. The worker hesitated, dropping a total bombshell. There was even more of this stuff on the way, leaving Masaru absolutely floored. They were trapped in a brutal long-term contract signed before they even set foot in the city, and they were stuck buying this ore for another entire year. Masaru let out a heavy sigh, deciding they had to at least smelt it into ingots and experiment with making alloys, prompting a confused worker to ask, "Wait, what the heck is an alloy?" He broke it down simply. Mix copper and tin, and you get bronze, a metal tough enough for armor, stronger than copper, but not quite as legendary as iron. He dreamed of forging stainless steel using iron and chromium, but the blank stares from the crowd told him he was speaking a completely different language. He tried again, explaining that if a metal isn't strong enough on its own, you fuse it with another to create a brand new supermaterial with incredible powers. But he warned them that one wrong move would ruin everything, before dashing off to get those inventory files in order. With the place finally spotless, he was itching to put his god-tier smithing skills to the ultimate test. He stared at the forge, wondering if he could manifest a blade just by picturing it. If that worked, this wasn't just a skill, it was a total game-breaking cheat. These skill tickets were the real deal, and now he just needed to push his precision to the absolute limit. He stacked the raw materials and unleashed his power, fusing them instantly into a solid block of metal. The realization hit him. Mastering this meant he could create anything, and he spent the next few hours frantically crafting smaller gear. He locked his eyes on a finished knife, his mind racing with new possibilities. He began tearing the weapon apart, obsessed with every tiny component hidden inside the hilt. A wild thought struck him. If he could deconstruct it so easily, why couldn't he build a masterpiece from scratch? Driven by pure adrenaline, he fired up the forge and started hammering glowing iron with everything he had. Onlookers watched in awe as he plunged the white-hot steel into the water, his old-school training turning the metal into a blade of legendary toughness. Masaru was busy expanding the edge of his blade when Lancelot suddenly burst onto the scene. Lancelot's eyes lit up seeing the forge in action. admitting he'd been watching since noon after finishing his chores, just hoping to get his own sword sharpened. But Lancelot couldn't stop staring at Masaru's new creation, even though Masaru promised his next one would be even deadlier. Lancelot handed over his dull, useless hunk of junk for an upgrade, and Masaru knew instantly he could transform this scrap metal into a weapon of war. Lancelot spotted some mysterious items on the table, but Masaru told him to wait until tomorrow for a massive reveal that would change everything. Lancelot's curiosity is burning, but a hyped-up Masaru tells him to get lost so he can start the next phase. As Lancelot retreats, he's blown away by Masaru's ironclad resolve. Even as the sun vanishes and night takes over, Masaru is still grinding away at his workbench. He's on a roll, pumping out invention after invention in a frenzy of creation. He ponders why serving others brings him such a rush, finally admitting to himself that he's hopelessly obsessed with the art of crafting. He's ready to storm the town tomorrow to teach the locals his new tech, but for now, he's staying in the zone to create just a little bit more. Morning light hits the workshop to find Masaru passed out at his desk, only to be jolted awake by a mysterious girl. He blinks his eyes open, half dead to the world, and mumbles, "Who the heck are you?" She snaps back that she's just a messenger sent on a mission. She explains that the knights are completely slammed with work, so she's the one stuck running their errands. Once she confirms his identity, she drops the bombshell. He's scheduled for a high-stakes duel against Lancelot in just 3 days. She warns him that showing up is mandatory, leaving Masaru fuming that he almost forgot about this annoying fight. The girl thinks he's a total freak and notes that Lancelot is vibrating with excitement, but Masaru just calls him a battle-crazed junkie who forces his own rules on everyone. She warns him that a medical crew will be on standby so things don't get too bloody, but Masaru just stands up and lets out a massive stretch. He casually shrugs and says he'll try his absolute hardest not to wreck Lancelot too badly. She mocks him for thinking he's got a chance, but Masaru just tells her to send Lancelot to the plaza, leaving her wondering what he's plotting. Masaru smirks, announcing he's about to put on a show that will blow their minds. Later that day, Lancelot finally makes his way to the bustling town plaza. He searches for Masaru, who's actually deep inside a well with a squad of knights, rigging up a mysterious pipe. Once the job's finished, they haul him back to the surface just as Lancelot arrives. Lancelot instantly recognizes those strange machine parts from the night before, and Masaru confirms the hype. This is a water pump, and it's time to get to work. He rallies the entire crowd, shouting that this incredible new tool is going to make drawing water easier than they ever imagined. He promises them it's incredibly simple to use, then picks a woman from the crowd to help him prove it. She steps forward nervously, doubting she can do it. But Masaru reassures her that man, woman, or child, anyone can master this machine. He instructs her to pour a little water into the opening and then start cranking the lever up and down. After just a few seconds of anticipation, a massive stream of water comes gushing out of the pipe. The crowd goes wild, screaming that it's pure magic. Masaru explains it's a pump, and he's going to install one at every major well in the city, so they better treat his inventions with respect. But Masaru isn't stopping there. Next, he sets his sights on revolutionizing their clunky horse-drawn carriages. He remembers how miserable the ride was and crawls underneath to find a primitive metal axle bolted directly to the frame. No wonder every bump feels like a nightmare. Lancelot is baffled, but Masaru explains his master plan. He's going to detach the cabin and install a high-tech spring suspension system to soak up the impact. Lancelot is still struggling to wrap his head around it, so Masaru breaks down the design, even though he admits this anti-shake system is still experimental. Without wasting a second, they start building the foundation. Following his blueprints to the letter, the men use every ounce of their strength to bring Masaru's vision to life. Masaru finally brings his very first prototype to life, but his mana is completely tapped out. So he tells Lancelot to take a slow, cautious test drive while the knights prep a horse. After taking it for a spin and jotting down his thoughts, Lancelot rushes back to Masaru. Masaru asks for his verdict, and Lancelot is absolutely stunned, claiming every other carriage ride was a lie compared to this silky smooth masterpiece. Masaru explains that city carriages are total bone shakers, so he engineered a system to swallow every bump, and he's just getting started with these shock absorbers. Lancelot asks if they can go bigger, and Masaru reveals his grand plan, a massive carriage that can haul 10 people at once. Lancelot is overjoyed that future expeditions will be a breeze, but suddenly, A mob of eager knights starts begging for a turn, forcing him to shut down the testing for the day. Masaru pulls Lancelot away for a private talk, while Lancelot marvels at how these inventions are going to change the world forever. Masaru reveals he's got even more secret tools and needs to train craftsmen to build them. Exactly what he wanted to discuss yesterday. Masaru reminds him of their promise. Every single agreement they make must be perfectly fair. Lancelot nods, admitting their current offer is too weak, and asks Masaru what he truly desires in return. Masaru drops a bombshell. He wants a total ceasefire between humans and beast folk, plus every single scrap of their surplus ore. A heavy silence falls over them as they weigh the massive stakes of this deal. Sloth breaks the silence, stunned, and asks if that's really all he's asking for. Masaru gives the nod, and Lancelot seals the deal right then and there. This treaty is a total game changer, swapping tech for a future where the beast folk can finally live in peace. Masaru worries about taking the leftover ore, but Lancelot promises it won't hurt the town, even swearing on his life that his city won't attack, though he warns that the rest of the kingdom is still a massive threat. Masaru beams with a massive smile and gives him a heartfelt thank you. Lancelot bellows a laugh as he walks off, shouting that he's hyped for their epic duel in 3 days. Masaru stands there stunned but grateful, realizing that even though it's just a verbal promise, Lancelot is a man of his word, and the human invasions are finally over. Completely burnt out and running on 0 mana, Masaru is desperate to just crawl into bed and pass out. But the peace doesn't last, as people swarm him for a hygiene lecture and start barking a dozen different requests at him until he's ready to explode. By the time Masaru finally drags himself through his front door that night, he is absolutely wrecked, both in mind and body. Trying to teach advanced tech to people who have no clue is a brutal uphill battle, making him realize just how much patience his old masters had back in his original world. He stares out at the moon, thinking of the people he'll never see again, and starts singing a soft, lonely song, only for a voice to suddenly call him out for being totally cringe. He looks up to find Victinius perched on the roof with a somber look, asking if that's a song from his home about 2 souls ripped apart, where the singer has lost all hope but still longs to scream their feelings to the world. Masaru nods, explaining it's an ancient poem from his world, and he even recites a few haunting verses before his memory fails him. Victinius gives a playful smirk, teasing that he must be thinking of a girl he loved, and when she asks what this mystery woman was like, he leaps onto the roof and starts pouring his heart out, describing a girl who was petite, cute, and worked with every ounce of her soul. It was love at first sight. He eventually gathered the courage to confess his feelings, stumbling through his words like a nervous wreck. But life had other plans. A few years later, she married into another family. Victinius looks at him with pure pity, and Masaru admits it still stings, even though he eventually found the strength to wish her a happy life. In a crazy coincidence, he met a kid in the rabbit village with the exact same name, and the memory just came rushing back until he'd spilled his entire life story. Overwhelmed with guilt, Victini tries to apologize, but Masaru stops her, realizing this was the goodbye she'd hinted at before. He's changed so many lives now that there's simply no room left for regret. He leans his weight against her shoulder, confessing that the rabbit people gave him a brand new reason to live, and he thanks her for those feelings that truly saved his soul. Suddenly, Victinius leaps up, nearly knocking him over as she brags that she's the divine goddess who summoned him, so of course her mere presence makes everyone feel better. Masaru just sighs, realizing how quickly she lets praise go to her head. She tilts her head, staring at him with pure curiosity. He locks eyes with her and admits that even though she's a total klutz, she's still technically his goddess. Victinius's temper flares at the insult, sending a panicked Masaru into a frenzy of apologies as he begs for forgiveness and swears he's eternally grateful she brought him to this world. A soft smile finally crosses her face as she accepts his apology. Reinvigorated and ready for action, Masaru heads off to the forge to get back to work, while a stunned Victinius stays behind to soak in the peaceful night air. As Masaru's footsteps fade away, she remains perched on the rooftop, gazing silently at the glowing moon. For 3 straight days after the chaos with Tunisia, Masaru doesn't get a single second of rest. He sprints from town to town, sounding the alarm and warning everyone about the madness that unfolded. Every spare moment he can find is spent obsessively preparing for the brutal showdown on the horizon. Finally, the fateful day of the duel arrives, and Masaru marches toward the training grounds with gritted teeth. He stops in his tracks when he sees a massive, roaring crowd has already gathered. He charges straight toward Lancelot, demanding to know what the hell is going on. Lancelot is genuinely impressed that Masaru didn't tuck tail and run, but Masaru's too stunned by the massive festival-like crowd to care about the praise. Lancelot tells him to ignore his rowdy men. That's just how they get when he draws steel. But he's dying to know. Where's that legendary upgraded sword Masaru promised? Masaru just laughs it off, asking who'd be crazy enough to hand their weapon to an opponent before a duel, before casually mentioning he actually broke Lancelot's reference blade. Lancelot vows to turn that grudge into pure power for today's fight, while Masaru eyes Lancelot's massive black blade, realizing it's forged from some seriously high-grade metal. He looks Lancelot dead in the eye and asks if he's really using that thing, mocking it as just another ordinary-looking sword. Without another word, Masaru reaches down and unsheathes his own weapon. Lancelot mocks the short blade, saying it'll look adorable next to his victory's sake tonight. But Masaru fires back that he'll try his best not to hurt the big guy too badly. Lancelot rests his heavy blade on his shoulder and dares Masaru to go all out, recalling how he made every rookie who ever underestimated him eat their words. When Masaru asks if he even knows what it's like to lose, Lancelot drops a chilling truth. No human has ever defeated him. Masaru's hit with a wave of realization that his prep might be useless, but Lancelot is hungry to see the secret strategy of a man who can solo a goblin rider. Lancelot demands that Masaru strike with everything he's got, and with a determined nod, the two warriors finally step onto the training grounds. The entire stadium erupts into a deafening, blood-pumping roar. In the middle of the chaos, Masaru's eyes lock onto a messenger girl who somehow snagged a front-row seat to the action. He can't shake the feeling. Who the hell is she? And then she looks right at him and flashes a mysterious smile. Moments later, the referee marches onto the field, ready to start the show. He bellows to the crowd that the legendary showdown between Lancelot and Masaru is officially underway. This is a winner-take-all brawl that only ends when someone hits the dirt or begs for mercy, and the ref warns them both to keep it honorable. The signal rings out and steel immediately slams against steel. As sparks fly, a man asks the messenger girl for her take, but she snaps at him for using her real name before admitting that while Masaru looks like a total amateur, his confidence suggests he's got a secret ace up his sleeve. Another spectator chimes in, warning that if Lancelot figures out Masaru's game plan, this whole fight will be over in a heartbeat. To the crowd's absolute shock, these two warriors actually look like equals in the heat of battle. Lancelot admits he's impressed to find someone who can match his raw power, but Masaru just grins and tells him he's ready to wrap this up with a win. Suddenly, Lancelot twists his blade with expert precision, sending Masaru's sword flying into the sky. He dares Masaru to stop holding back before burying a devastating heavy kick right into his ribs. Lancelot swings again, and a panicked Masaru barely escapes with his life, gasping out to ask if his opponent is actually trying to murder him. Lancelot laughs, calling him a total enigma. He's got the stance of a veteran and the power of a beast, but his actual sword skills are absolutely garbage. He unleashes another heavy strike, forcing Masaru to retreat under the sheer pressure. Even as he dominates, Lancelot notes that Masaru's survival instincts are surprisingly sharp. The duel rages on, and Masaru realizes he's being suffocated by Lancelot's superior experience. His body just can't move as freely as he needs it to. He flashes back to Victinius, telling him he's a one-man army, and while that feels like a lie right now, he realizes he's finally gathered the intel he needs to flip the script. It's time! Masaru finally decides to unleash his ultimate trump card! This move was forged through years of grueling labor at the home center, absorbing every secret from master craftsmen to handle any crisis imaginable. Now, every ounce of that blood, sweat, and expert knowledge is about to explode into one perfect final strike. Bypassing his item box entirely, he manifests massive, heavy logs that materialize out of thin air all around him. Lancelot's jaw drops as he realizes Masaru is a master of high-level techniques that weren't even mentioned in his status report. He screams in disbelief, demanding to know if Masaru actually thinks he can win with just a few wooden logs. But his confusion turns to pure shock as Masaru fuses woodworking, smithing, and construction skills all at once. Massive beams snap together, forming colossal complex mechanisms in the blink of an eye. Lancelot is completely surrounded by towering siege weapons that leave him frozen in terror. For Masaru, production skills mean absolute precision, bringing his deadliest visions to life with terrifying accuracy. He even spawns battering rams with their hammers already cocked back, pushing his mana to the limit to build these lethal structures. He knows that a relentless, multi-directional barrage is the only way to crush his foe. But Lancelot moves like a blur, slicing through the massive war machines with a single flick of his blade. He looks disgusted, wondering if Masaru actually thought such a pathetic trick would work on him. Sensing Masaru was just stalling to launch another holy angel attack, Lancelot prepares to lunge forward and end this before another move can even start. Suddenly, the messenger girl's eyes widen in realization as she screams a desperate warning to Lancelot. But it's too late. Masaru is already aimed and ready with a gargantuan bow, and from this range, there's nowhere for Lancelot to hide. Masaru lets loose a massive arrow at Lancelot, who instantly cleaves the projectile in half with a lightning-fast swing. Seizing that split second, Masaru lunges forward to deliver a devastating blow. Lancelot braces himself and closes the distance. He realizes his only shield is his own arm. But if he can force a bloody brawl, he might just pull off a miracle. Before he can even blink, Masaru's blade shatters Lancelot's steel into 1,000,000 shards. The sheer force sends him crashing into the dirt, defeated. The ref calls it right then and there. Masaru is the champion! Lancelot realizes he was played. Masaru knew that sword would snap from the very beginning. Masaru confesses he saw a flaw in the blade's craftsmanship and bet everything on that one weakness. To test his theory, he'd already destroyed the sample sword Lancelot gave him earlier. Since the materials were different, it was a massive gamble. But every heavy attack and giant arrow was designed to set up that final perfect strike. He reveals the bow is a siege engine called Blystar, admitting even he was shocked Lancelot didn't back down from the shot. That hesitation was all Masaru needed to close in and finish the job, proving he had the entire fight mapped out from the start. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was a battle of engineering and pure strategic genius. Masaru shrugs it off, saying the duel only proved his talent for smithing, which is exactly why he refused to give Lancelot a weapon beforehand. He whips out a massive legendary blade and hands it over to Lancelot as a tribute, calling it a fair trade for a warrior who appeared out of nowhere to challenge him. He claims this sword is a mark of his respect, believing that Lancelot is the only man alive worthy of wielding such power. Lancelot grips the hilt, gives it a test swing, and is absolutely stunned by its quality. He laughs, telling Masaru that handing him a weapon this deadly before their duel would have been a suicide mission. He admits it once more. He is a man who lives and breathes for the pure adrenaline of combat. Whether he's using a blade or his bare fists, he craves the evolution that only comes from a life or death struggle. That's the fire that burns in his soul every single time he steps onto the battlefield. Lancelot reminisces about the brothers in arms who once flocked to his side, fueling his drive to keep fighting. But eventually, he looked back only to find a cold, empty void. Everyone had become too terrified to even stand near him. It's a cruel irony. You can't win a war alone, yet the stronger he got, the more his enemies vanished. He was reduced to wasting his days in isolation, doing nothing but polishing his blade. Before he knew it, he was carrying the entire organization on his back, crushing every opponent without breaking a sweat. But this duel with Masaru was different. It was exhilarating. He warns Masaru not to rely only on his sword, because soon there might be no one left who can even challenge him. Every fight is a chance to evolve, and Masaru has leveled up like a monster. Lancelot predicts Masaru will one day surpass even him, and when that day comes, he wants a rematch. Masaru tries to decline, but then admits, if it means seeing Lancelot's true peak again, he's down for one more round. Right then and there, Lancelot crowns Masaru the official victor and prepares to honor his word. Without wasting a second, he bellows the order. Every single enslaved beast folk is to be granted their total freedom. Later that night at a tavern, Cook and Eldam are kicking back when Eldam brings up how insane it is that Cook used production skills to survive a war zone. He even jokes that Cook should train his brother in construction to do the same. Cook just laughs it off, saying he'd need a massive mountain of skills like Masaru's to ever pull that off again. Suddenly, a voice booms from behind them. It's Lancelot, demanding to know if Masaru really has that much power. Cook and Eldam freeze solid, terrified to even turn around until they finally lock eyes with the legendary warrior himself. They scramble to explain it's all a big misunderstanding, but Lancelot just tells them to relax and pulls up a chair. He promises he's not there for blood. He just wants answers. He knows they're the ones who brought Masaru here, but the kid he just fought is a completely different beast than the one they remember. Even weirder? Masaru's official level doesn't match the godlike power he just displayed. With an arsenal of 20 skills and a unique title, Masaru was a complete outlier in the norm. Cook marveled at Masaru's prowess, suggesting his level could easily pass 60 or even 70. The fact that he was only level 16 left everyone astonished. Lancelot, boasting his level of 62, understood why the truth was kept hidden. Those numbers were mind-blowing. Cook emphasized that nobody, Not even the knights had such remarkable abilities. Lancelot recommended letting Masaru roam freely, finding entertainment in his unpredictable nature. Eldam found Lancelot's words somewhat pitiful, prompting a bittersweet end to their connection with Masaru after their duel. But Lancelot managed to secure a promise for a second duel. As the discussion continued, a messenger girl interrupted, inquiring about joining forces with Masaru. She teased about a conveniently available messenger for the job, sparking curiosity. Days later, by the assembly hall, a new chapter unfolded. Masaru reunited with Lancelot, recalling their past encounter and seeking permission to depart. Lancelot affirmed his progress and the ongoing mission to gather the beast folk, promising to contact Masaru when they reached his village. Masaru nodded in agreement. Then Masaru spotted bruises on Lancelot's face. Lightheartedly, Masaru questioned Lancelot about the scuffle, challenging if anyone dared to lay a hand on him. Lancelot cryptically hinted at an untouchable adversary, leaving a mysterious air. Out of nowhere, a girl emerged, kicking Lancelot for his words, defending a woman's honor. Masaru recognized her as the earlier messenger. Introducing her as Adelina, his spirited 19-year-old niece, Lancelot set a new dynamic in motion. Grateful for the introduction, Adelina pledged her dedication to Masaru, eager to fulfill her newfound role. Surprised by this unexpected arrangement, Masaru sought clarification from Lancelot, prompting a sly response. Lancelot explained that Adelina, seeking adventure, would accompany Masaru for her safety. Masaru realized Lancelot's scheme, feeling the weight of responsibility. Despite his reservations, Masaru acknowledged the need for help in developing the village after the beast folk's release. Adelina reassured him, showing her adaptability and interest in him. With a charming smile, Adelina expressed her intrigue, ready to embark on this new journey with Masaru. Masaru lets out a hearty laugh, realizing Adelina's got that stubborn Lancelot blood and won't back down for anything. He's down for the help, but drops a bombshell. They won't be back for years, leaving both Adelina and Lancelot completely stunned. Masaru reveals his grand vision, transforming this humble village into a massive safe haven for all beast folk, a project that'll take ages to complete. Lancelot tries to protest, but Adelina shuts him down instantly, threatening to disown him if he gets in her way. Defeated, Lancelot begs Masaru to protect her and to keep his hands off, while Masaru just gives a mysterious, reassuring smile. After thanking Lancelot for his incredible hospitality, Masaru promises they'll cross paths again, whether in times of peace or during their darkest hour. The duo sets off, and despite the delays, they crush every obstacle for the rabbit folk while forging powerful new alliances along the way. Finally, the moment arrives for Masaru to reunite with the rabbit tribe. He wastes no time, laying out every incredible detail of his journey to the group. But the work is far from over. They have massive plans to finalize and deep strategies to discuss. The second May spots him, she sprints forward and throws her arms around him in an emotional embrace. Masaru just closes his eyes, soaking in the warmth of the heartfelt reunion to the fullest. Once the chief hears the full scope of Masaru's achievements, his jaw absolutely hits the floor. They expected some basic supplies, but Masaru delivered a miracle. Adelina even jokes that her meathead uncle needs to take notes from him. The chief finally sees the truth. If they break away from their nation to join Masaru, they'll bury the hatchet and welcome his aid with open arms. But the chief fears their new tech might spark another bloody war, until Masaru reveals he's already secured a peace treaty with the commander himself. They're gearing up for the arrival of the freed beast folk, but the village is way too small, so Masaru drops a bombshell. They're building a massive new city of the beast folk. The next morning, Adelina and May are practically dragging Masaru out of bed, reminding him that he was the one who called this meeting. May starts teasing him for being a total sleepyhead, but a groggy Masaru blames it on the sheer exhaustion of carrying the world on his shoulders. The girls head out first, telling him to get his act together, when suddenly, BAM! A glowing system screen flashes right in front of his eyes. It's a message from Iara Saphira, sister of the god Victinius, revealing that the heavens are impressed by his progress and are rewarding him with a massive skill boost. They want him to keep building this peace, and they're backing him up with divine power. Masaru is stunned. It turns out he's not just dealing with one god, but a whole pantheon watching his every move. And thank goodness it looks like a goddess with some actual common sense has finally entered the chat. If the gods are handing out rewards for building civilization, Masaru realizes that the more he levels up this village, the more legendary loot he'll rake in. With power-ups like these on the line, his motivation is through the roof, but his daydreaming is cut short when Adelina's voice thunders from outside, demanding he get moving. Masaru scrambles out to join the group, frantically apologizing for making everyone wait on him. He gets straight to business, explaining that while it's incredible the enslaved beast folk are finally free, they're facing a massive crisis that could break them. 200 refugees are coming, which will triple the population overnight, so they need to overhaul their food supply, fortify their walls, and pitch tents immediately. But his real plan? Building a brand new city from the ground up. The crowd is absolutely floored, staring at him in total disbelief. He's already scouted the perfect location with the chief, but the people are skeptical. Can they really pull off a project this massive? Masaru looks them in the eye and vows to give everything he has to make it happen. He paints a picture of a sanctuary where everyone is safe, happy, and free. A legendary capital for all beast folk kind. The crowd erupts with excitement, ready to follow Masaru to the ends of the earth because they know this man is the real deal. But Masaru wasn't finished just yet. He had one final bombshell to drop. He confessed that keeping his past a secret felt like a total betrayal to the people who put their lives in his hands. The crowd froze as they realized they knew nothing about this man who had wandered out of the wilderness until Masaru finally decided to drop the mask. He revealed the impossible truth. He was summoned to this world by the gods themselves, ripped away from an entirely different dimension. The room went dead silent, and as Masaru scanned their shocked faces, he braced himself for the rejection he was sure was coming. Instead, the crowd exploded with hype, dying to know if he came from a distant land or if he'd actually stood face to face with a literal god. Adelina finally understood why Masaru always felt like an outsider, even as he worried that people were secretly mocking his story. Masaru doubted they'd buy it. But the chief stepped forward, declaring their absolute trust, because in this world, if the gods willed it, you didn't question it. Since he bled and worked alongside them, he was already family. And you never doubt your own blood. Suddenly, a swarm of kids mobbed him, firing off questions about his world's crazy tech and what the gods actually looked like in person. Annoyed, Masaru told them to pipe down until dinner, promising to forge a bronze statue just to show them what those gods really looked like. It was time to expand the village, so Masaru barked out orders to get the tents up while he handled the logistics for the timber. He whipped around to Adelina and May, his eyes burning with a secret mission only they could handle. They were going to help him manufacture slaked lime, the key to everything. The girls were lost, but Masaru revealed it was the secret ingredient for their future city, a task he'd only trust to his inner circle. Masaru leads the pair straight to a massive, imposing iron pot. He reveals they're about to forge slaked lime in this fiery furnace, starting by packing it with seashells and stoking a massive blaze underneath, before pointing out a mysterious box nearby. These are the bellows, he explains, designed to pump a relentless stream of oxygen directly into the heart of the flames. May thinks it sounds like a total drag, but Masaru explains that this blast of air will skyrocket the heat to a staggering 1,000 degrees. The girls are absolutely stunned, unable to even imagine that kind of blistering heat. He breaks it down. Water boils at a mere 100, but at 1,000 degrees, solid iron glows red hot and bends like clay, melting into liquid at even higher peaks. Adelina presses him on how he can possibly measure such extremes, and Masaru admits with a grin that even he doesn't have all the answers. He tells them that while the science is cool, staying alive and mastering your tools is what really counts. Adelina gets the safety part, but Masaru clarifies that proper use means actually turning your wild theories into a physical reality. True mastery depends entirely on the gear you have and the sheer brilliance of the person wielding it. He warns them that every new invention brings massive power and even heavier responsibility, requiring them to think critically for the rest of their lives. He pushes them to use their heads to find success, promising that even a total disaster is just a stepping stone to growth, even if May is still skeptical. Masaru gives them both a reassuring head pat, explaining that failing is the only way to truly learn and evolve into something greater. With the lesson over, he orders them to fire up the furnace, leaving them to the work while he heads out to scout the perfect spot for their future city. Masaru wastes no time, heading out at dawn to scout the land and clear the path for their grand construction. He realized those slot machine skills were a total steal, terrifyingly powerful. He was way stronger now. But the land felt eerie, like a massive war had completely wiped the map clean. The chief's spot was perfect. High ground, flat as a pancake, and sitting on rock-solid bedrock that was begging for a fortress. Masaru chose to go solo, betting his own skills could handle the job without bothering the rabbit folk, though even he had his doubts. He took a second to think and figured, hey, why not give it a shot? Using everything he learned in Putorium, he flattened the zone, but it drained his mana so hard it took 6 hours just to recharge. It hit him. He could clear this entire area solo in just a few days. If he grinded for 48 hours straight, he'd be finished way early, leaving him looking for his next big challenge. That's when his gaze locked onto the towering cliffs to the north. A light bulb went off. How could he forget the one thing he's been hunting for since he arrived in this world? He sprinted toward those cliffs like a madman. Finding this was his #1 mission, and he wasted no time scouring the base of the mountain. There they were, exactly what he'd been searching for. Slimes. He headed back to the chief, who was blown away by Masaru's constant help. The villagers were incredibly thankful, and at this point, the chief trusted him blindly. Masaru was baffled when the villagers freaked out at the sight of his new pet. He tried to tell them the slime was staying and they should be friends, but everyone just bolted in pure terror. They questioned his sanity for bringing a monster into town, but Masaru had a plan. These slimes were going to be the ultimate cleaning crew. For now, the little guy was being a good boy, and Masaru was dying to study its secrets. Back in Putarium, he'd read that not all monsters are out for blood. Some can actually live alongside humans as valuable resources, just like lumber or ore. When they asked if he was sure, Masaru's mind was already on building a functional toilet, so he just nodded and went along with it. The chief's jaw dropped, admitting he'd never dreamed of using monsters like this. He looked at Masaru and asked if his crazy plan was to turn these slimes into living trash cans. Masaru nodded, eager to see exactly what these blobs could stomach and, more importantly, find their fatal weakness so they could keep them in check. He didn't stop there, pitching a plan to farm local monitor lizards to end their food shortages forever, with slimes being the crucial first step. The chief was sold and promised to spread the word, earning a grateful smile from Masaru. According to Masaru's research notes, these emerald green slimes are about 2 feet wide and look exactly like giant, squishy buns. Turns out, they're terrible climbers. If an obstacle is taller than them or too narrow to grip, they just lose their footing and slide right back down. For his first big test, Masaru tossed a pile of junk like old wood and dead leaves straight into the slime's body. The creature sucked them in and slowly dissolved the waste over several days. It wasn't exactly a gourmet meal, but the slime finished every bit. This proved they could handle the village's sewage with ease, but as Masaru pushed forward with his study, something totally unexpected happened. Without warning, the once squishy slimes began to shrivel up and turn rock hard. Masaru stared in shock, completely baffled by this bizarre transformation. He quickly realized they were dying of thirst, uncovering their fatal flaw: dehydration. He kept testing and found they also couldn't stand fire or salt water. Now that he knew how to stop them, volunteers flocked to help him, leading Masaru to a mind-blowing theory. He realized these slimes might actually be the planet's own secret janitors, designed to scrub the world clean. When he dropped one into filthy water, it sucked up every speck of grime, leaving it crystal clear. Masaru beamed with excitement, realizing the world was still full of incredible mysteries just waiting to be solved. He felt a surge of pride knowing the villagers finally saw these slimes as allies instead of monsters. Slimes were exploding in popularity and everyone was starting to raise them, but Masaru had to drop a truth bomb. These magical beasts are straight up dangerous. When May begged to pet one, he shut her down instantly, reminding her that slimes are definitely not cuddly pets. Total exhaustion finally slammed into Masaru, and his eyelids felt like lead as he drifted toward sleep. Later, when he sat down with the chief, the old man looked at him like he'd lost his mind, questioning if he was actually being serious. Masaru was totally blindsided by the question, but the chief explained that while the whole village was swamped with the slime project, he couldn't believe Masaru still planned to charge back out into the wild for more resources. Adelina chimed in, saying that while Masaru is a total weirdo, he always has a genius reason that eventually comes to light. Masaru argued they were still desperately low on materials, and he wanted to save the environment for the city's future. The chief realized he'd completely missed the big picture and handed the entire mission over to Masaru. The chief vowed the village would do whatever it takes to back him up, and Masaru gave him a heartfelt thanks. He then dropped a massive request for the gathering team. He needed them to hunt down every tree seed and sapling they could find. Adelina was baffled. What was he really up to? Masaru revealed his master plan to plant them, warning that while trees take years to grow, they can be destroyed in seconds. He was bringing the legendary concept of reforestation to this new world. By healing the mountains, they'd have an endless supply of wood without destroying nature. He laughed it off, admitting he learned all this from a part-time job at a hardware store, not some fancy training. The chief leaned in, dead serious, asking exactly how many saplings they would need to pull this off. Masaru told them to trust their gut and grab every fruit-bearing plant they could find. They'd nurse them in the village until they were waist-high before moving them to the mountains, and he was ready to move the second they were packed. He planned to head out alone, but Adelina wasn't having it. She immediately demanded to go with him. And not to be left behind, Mei declared she was joining the party at the crack of dawn. Masaru tests Mei's memory, but she snaps back that she's already a plant expert after just 3 days. He tries to bench the newcomer Adelina, but she's not having it. She's dying to explore this new world. Masaru hesitates to say no, especially when Adelina grabs Mei and insists they've got nothing but free time for an adventure. Totally caught off guard, Masaru gives in. But he warns them that once they're out there, his word is absolute law. The trio strikes out on their first scouting mission, quickly leaving the safety of the village far behind. Adelina thinks they're just grabbing firewood, but Masaru reveals they're hunting for heavy-duty stones too. With the chief's approval, they're harvesting seeds and medicine, while a hyped-up Mei wonders if these plants will grow into giants. Masaru warns them that in this forest, they must live in total harmony with the wild if they want to survive. Adelina rolls her eyes, teasing Masaru for making everything sound way more complicated than it needs to be. Masaru gets serious, explaining how his old world was destroyed by human greed and the extinction of countless species. He preaches about living in perfect balance, claiming every living creature is a precious child of God. Then he immediately feels awkward, realizing he was trying way too hard to sound like a profound hero. Whack! Adelina pelts him with a rock, reminding him that since he's literally met God, people are going to take his words seriously. Mei gets them back on track to start the harvest, while Adelina prays they find something truly epic. Masaru finally calls for a break so they can catch their breath. By the time they're done, they've managed to haul in a massive mountain of logs. Adelina looks around for Masaru to help pack up, but Mei reveals he vanished ages ago. Panic starts to set in as Adelina wonders where he went, but Mei decides to head out and track him down. Mei's rabbit ears twitch as she catches the sharp ring of clashing steel, leaving Adelina stunned by her incredible hearing as she wonders if Masaru is already locked in battle. They charge toward the noise and find Masaru mid-swing, violently slicing through a mysterious target. A strange object comes hurtling straight for Adelina's head, and Masaru screams at her to just catch it. Terror grips Adelina, but she manages to snatch the flying projectile right out of the air. She lets out a horrified shriek, demanding to know what kind of gross thing Masaru just forced her to grab. Masaru awkwardly apologizes, claiming he thought she'd just dodge it, but a fuming Adelina warns him he won't get off so easy next time as he explains he was just defending himself from a vicious ambush. Mei looks closer and realizes the creature is actually a massive, grotesque earthworm. They explain these beasts usually lurk underground eating bugs, making Masaru realize they're just like the worms from his world that keep the soil rich and the plants thriving. Adelina is baffled, while Masaru is stumped because he can't find a single hole where the monster could have burrowed into the dirt. Adelina reveals that these worms use powerful earth magic to phase through the ground without leaving a trace, leaving Masaru absolutely stunned. Masaru suddenly realizes these worms are a goldmine for high-quality bowstrings in Putariem, while Mei asks how they even process the monster. Adelina explains their muscles are incredibly tough and elastic, making them perfect for elite armor and gear, which is why hunters travel from all over just to find one. These materials sell for a massive payout since almost no one can kill a worm this easily, and the three of them share a long, silent look. Mei just shrugs it off because of course Masaru makes a high-rank hunt look like a walk in the park. Masaru decides right then and there to add hunting rare monsters for loot to their official mission list. Mei explains that for the best magical meat, they hunt monitor lizards and guinea fowl, and since Masaru's mouth is watering, she offers to track them down by their unique calls. Out of nowhere, a massive beast lets out a deafening roar that hits Mei's sensitive ears like a physical blow. sending her crashing to the ground in agony as the others rush to her side. As May breaks down in tears, Masaru is hit with a flashback to the terrifying day they first met during that goblin encounter. But the sheer terror in her eyes is unlike anything he's ever seen, and just as he moves to investigate, Adelina grabs him, terrified despite knowing his strength. She pleads with him to stay back, convinced that charging into a fight right now is a total suicide mission. Masaru freezes, quickly promising her that he isn't looking for a brawl. He just needs to see what kind of monster is lurking nearby, and after swearing to return immediately, he asks her to point the way. She signals toward the danger, and Masaru vanishes into the brush. But what he finds waiting for him is a nightmare of colossal, towering beasts. The sight leaves him absolutely paralyzed with pure, unadulterated shock. Masaru ducks behind a massive tree, holding his breath until the monster finally stalks away. He finally exhales a massive sigh of relief, realizing he narrowly escaped a gruesome fate. At first, he thinks it's a bear, but this 4-meter-tall titan is unlike any magical creature he's ever seen in his life. As he wonders if they're mid-turf war, he spots a bizarre, 6-legged giant horse and immediately triggers his appraisal skill to see what he's dealing with. The stats flash before his eyes, revealing this massive beast is the legendary assault savanna horse. His mind raced with questions about magicules, the very essence of this world's power. But he couldn't shake the image of that monstrous bear devouring the horse. Why did such a predator just walk away? Suddenly, the sky broke open and the rain began to pour. Realizing the hunt was over, he rushed back to Adelina and May so they could warn the chief about the nightmare he'd just witnessed. Back at camp, the chief's face went pale as they described the beast. He revealed it was the legendary and lethal demon bear. Masaru brought up the mutated horse, and the chief explained it was a magicule-warped freak that used to terrorize their old home, a living natural disaster that no human could ever hope to defeat. Masaru breathed a sigh of relief that he'd listened to May's warning, and the chief agreed, admitting they were incredibly lucky to be alive. That monster only left because its belly was full and it could sense the coming storm. Adelina panicked, fearing the bear would raid the village, but the chief calmed her down. The rain signaled the arrival of the great monsoon. For 2 straight weeks, the sky will dump a deluge that turns the entire landscape into a massive knee-deep lake, drowning the fields and forests alike. The chief was cool as ice, knowing the flood would trap the bear and give them time to build defenses. But Masaru couldn't shake a growing sense of dread about the world turning into an ocean. Masaru jumped up, realizing this flood would shift every animal's territory. And as he bolted for the door, the chief shouted that sea creatures would be everywhere. Masaru threw out a quick apology, looking like a man possessed, leaving the chief to wonder if he was crazy enough to hunt the demon bear alone. "Forget the bear! I need real food!" Masaru screamed, his Japanese palate dying for something other than plain meat before he vanished into the rain, leaving the girls stunned by his sheer speed. He sprinted through the rising waters, thrilled to have this drowned world all to himself, but just as he started to explore, something sharp clamped onto his leg. He looked down in shock, only to find a massive crab latched onto his foot with a death grip. He whips a rope out of his item box, lashes it tight, and bags that massive crab in seconds. His eyes light up when he realizes it's a rare forest green gizami, and with the area crawling with top-tier loot, he vows to hunt down every single thing that looks tasty. In no time, he's got a mountain of creatures piled high, laughing as he says farewell to hunger and imagines the shocked faces of the villagers when they see this haul. But then, Victinius teleports in out of nowhere, demanding to know why he's out here talking to himself like a crazy person. Masaru nearly jumps out of his skin, and she just laughs, teasing him for being so jumpy while he swears he'll never get used to her sneak attacks. He asks why she's out in this downpour, but she just shrugs. Her divine barrier keeps her bone dry, leaving Masaru jealous of her god-tier powers as he demands to know her real motive. She claims she's just curious about his massive crab haul, making Masaru wonder if this goddess has actually gone her entire divine life without a decent meal. He wants to mess with her, but he has to admit she's got great taste. Anybody would be drooling over a feast this epic. When she asks if the food is legit, Masaru flashes a grin, grabs her hand, and declares that it's time for the two of them to have a private feast. Before long, he's got a makeshift base ready for action. Victinius is blown away by his building skills, but Masaru just tells her to grab a seat because it's crab time. She's shocked they're eating it right now, but he promises her that once it's boiled, it'll be the best thing she's ever tasted. Victinius watches with intense focus as the crab starts to sizzle in the pot. Out of nowhere, she pulls out a cloth and starts vigorously drying his soaked hair. Masaru is completely blindsided by the sudden gesture. As he struggles to pull away, she tells him to hold still. leading Masaru to question if this sweet side is actually her real personality, which she finds incredibly offensive. She barks at him to shut up and focus on the fire, but it's all a front for her true feelings. She admits she's being selfish, but this is her secret way of honoring all the grueling work he's done for the village. Masaru gives a silent nod as she continues tenderly drying his hair. The crab is finally served, and Victinius is blown away because it looks even better than she imagined. Masaru agrees, but he can't help but feel the air get thick with tension after her sudden display of affection. She dives in but immediately struggles with the rock-hard shell. Masaru just grins, showing her the secret trick to cracking it open before handing her the prize. The moment she takes a bite, her eyes practically pop out of her head. She gasps that it's absolutely divine. It's a flavor explosion of rich umami and sweetness that has her devouring every bite. Masaru jokes he better start eating before she clears the plate, but she just snaps at him to shut up and give her seconds. After the feast, she thanks him, admitting she's never tasted anything this incredible in her entire life. Masaru tells her there's plenty left over, and she immediately asks if she can bring some back for her sister. Masaru remembers the sister and quips that she clearly has way more common sense than Victinius. She's offended by the jab, but Masaru just laughs, telling her to take what she wants, even if it's better hot. She stuffs it in her item box, calling him a literal miracle worker. From gourmet food to legendary swords, she confesses she never gets tired of watching him create. Masaru is baffled since she's the one who gave him these powers, but she quickly shuts that down. Those skills are just tools. Without his imagination and knowledge, they're useless. Masaru finally gets it. His real power comes from his past life as a legendary handyman back in the countryside. He describes the massive rural home centers that dominate the landscape, staying open from dawn until dusk. They sold every single thing imaginable, from delicate flowers to heavy-duty farming gear. During the chaos of planting season, he'd open the doors early to help the local farmers. He became a master of every seed, tree, and sapling that passed through those doors. He wasn't just a clerk. He was building sheds, laying bricks, and fixing electronics. From woodworking to pet food and even diapers, there was nothing he couldn't handle. He mastered every product so he could teach others, but his job was a total nightmare. While he was drowning in work, his lazy manager just sat back, barking orders to learn even more while the store descended into chaos. The memories hit him like a truck, and he's nearly moved to tears. Victinius reassures him that his struggle paid off, because now he's saving this entire world. She even mentions the statue he built of her, leaving him totally flustered. He warns the crew that they have to slaughter that demon bear immediately, or the beast folk moving into the city are in for a gruesome homecoming. Masaru plays it cool, even though he originally came for a hunt and ended up running for his life at the mere thought of that beast, a move that leaves Victinius absolutely floored. She flat out refuses to accept his cowardice, leaving Masaru looking completely blindsided. She reminds him that he's conquered this new world and achieved the impossible, and she won't stand by and watch him act like a pathetic weakling. Masaru smirks, teasingly asking what she'd do if he actually abandoned the fight. But Victinius fires back with ice-cold determination. She declares with total certainty that if he runs, she will never forgive him. Masaru laughs it off and calls her a useless goddess, leaving her jaw on the floor, before grinning and admitting that if a literal deity is calling him out, he'd better stop acting like a loser and step up. Masaru rushes to the village to beef up the walls, overseeing workers as they mix lime and dirt while frantically hauling in more anti-beast stakes to bolster their defenses. A worker reports that the entrance wall is nearly finished and the entire project is moving at lightning speed. With the lookout post complete, small fry monsters aren't a threat anymore, and now they're even adding sniper platforms for the archers, so Masaru orders them to keep the momentum going. The foreman confirms that traps are being laid across the perimeter, and they're clearing out monster nests to harvest even more stone for the build. Thanks to the rainy season's bounty, their bear-killing strategy is coming together perfectly, and while Masaru craves some solo grinding, he knows fortifying the village is the winning move. As night falls, he checks his stats over dinner and realizes he's unlocked a brand new skill right under his own nose. It's not a combat ability, and he knows he's still desperately lacking the raw firepower needed for the carnage ahead. Right on cue, Mei walks up and asks the ultimate question. Does he need the power of fire magic? After praising her hard work, Masaru explains he needs something far beyond basic fire magic, and he's desperate to know if any of the rabbit folk can actually pull it off. Mei shuts him down instantly, suggesting the fox tribe might be his only hope, which makes Masaru decide to bring the fox people in as fast as possible. Nusa drops a truth bomb, Beast folk are physical powerhouses, but they have absolutely zero talent for the arcane arts. It finally clicks for Masaru that he hasn't seen a single spell cast since arriving, so he pulls Adelina aside to find out just how many mages were actually in the last city. Adelina's answer is pathetic. Only 2 people in that entire city could even conjure a simple splash of water. Masaru's heart sinks as he curses that useless goddess Victinius for promising him an epic fantasy world that's actually a magical desert. But just as he's fuming, a sharp ping rings out. He checks the notification and finds a direct message from Erisafira, ready to reveal the shocking truth about magic in this world. May and Adelina stare in total awe at the glowing screen floating in midair as Masaru realizes he's receiving another high-level transmission from the heavens. The divine text lays it all out, explaining how this world is barely scratching the surface of science and the fundamental laws of reality. While monsters are born with natural powers, every intelligent race from humans to demons has completely failed to actually research or master the secrets of magic. The heavens are literally demanding that Masaru revolutionize their entire civilization, leaving him stunned as Adelina asks if he's even capable of casting a single spell. When he reveals that he might actually have the power to heal, Adelina and May freeze, staring at him in absolute shock. He realizes the goddess wants him to build the very foundation of magical knowledge, and even though he's no wizard, he vows to create the facilities needed to spread that power to the masses. There's only one way to make this happen. It's time to build a legendary academy. May is baffled by the concept, so Masaru explains that in his world, every child spends nearly a decade in these institutions to sharpen their minds and master the world. Adelina finally grasps how technology evolved in Masaru's world, while Masaru notes that even this land has its own unique advancements. Adelina wonders just how massive the gap is between their 2 worlds, and Masaru realizes words aren't enough. He needs to show them. He reaches into his gear and pulls out his mysterious smartphone. May stares at it, convinced it's some tiny magical item box. But Masaru explains this device is the absolute peak of his world's genius. He tries to power it on, only to realize the battery is dead, making him wonder if the frozen time inside his item box kept it from holding a charge. May is dying of curiosity, and Masaru drops a bombshell. This little gadget lets people communicate across vast distances. It captures photos, records videos, plays endless music, and even connects to a global network of games. But as he explains these godlike powers, Adelina and May just look completely baffled. Masaru realizes he's talking in circles, so he decides to stop explaining and start the demonstration. The excitement hits a fever pitch as he snaps their picture right before their eyes. He blasts music, performs lightning-fast calculations, and even shows off a few high-speed games. Eventually, Masaru catches himself, feeling a sting of guilt for getting distracted and goofing off when he should be focused. Later, alone in his tent, his mind races back to the secrets of magic. May said education wasn't the hurdle, but Masaru realizes he can't teach them anything if they don't have a single clue how it works. He sinks into deep thought, wondering how he'll ever succeed when healing is the only magic he can actually cast. Suddenly, Victinius manifests behind him, mocking him by saying the solution is simple since he's the one with the power. She stops cold, her eyes widening in shock as she accuses him of playing her for a fool. Masaru just smirks, knowing she's been spying on him anyway, but he stays focused on the fact that he's still trapped in the world of healing magic. Victinius shuts him down, revealing that he actually unleashed magic during his epic clash with Lancelot without even knowing it. In that desperate moment, he had flooded his sword with pure magical energy. Masaru is stunned, asking if that's what happened against the mountain bandits, but Victinius just shakes her head. That was nothing but his own raw physical skill. She reveals the shocking truth. Divine skills are shaped by the user's own imagination, which meant Masaru's powers were fueled by his old job at a hardware store. Masaru asks if healing magic follows different rules, and Victinius confirms that it's a total grind, requiring deep medical knowledge and agonizing time to actually work. It finally clicks why his skills were always so perfectly convenient, and he begs to know how to trigger that explosive magic he unleashed during the duel. Victinius reminds him that he's already felt that raw mana surging through his veins, and Masaru recalls the time he pushed himself until his energy was completely drained. She explains that magic is pure fuel, and he must visualize the spark, master the flow, and learn exactly how to release that power with maximum force. Masaru gives a confident thumbs up and invites her to join him, but a frustrated Victinius snaps that she's done enough, making him worry if she's breaking the rules by interfering. She brushes it off instantly, claiming she isn't the least bit scared of catching heat from the goddess Hera. Watching her reaction, Masaru begins to suspect that the goddess actually cares about him and is just trying to act tough. Irritated by his smug grin, Victinius decks him and warns him not to get cocky because she has her own secret reasons for helping. She confesses that she's only stepping up because her very own younger sister is the goddess of magic. Feeling the weight of being the eldest, she takes charge, while Masaru quickly clarifies that he's just impressed by her big sister instincts. After showing that rare glimpse of her softer side, Victinius vanishes, leaving Masaru to dive into his magic research with a brand new fire in his soul. Meanwhile, the village finally finishes its massive defenses against the demon bear, and life slowly returns to a peaceful crawl. But as the days bleed together, Masaru grows restless and bored because the monster still hasn't shown its face. Adelina thinks they should be grateful the beast is gone, but Masaru knows they have to kill it now, or it'll just come back to haunt them next year. Adelina breathes a sigh of relief as May confirms the village is finally safe, and the chief reveals Masaru's custom arrows are already changing the game for their hunters, leaving Adelina absolutely stunned. Masaru breaks it down, explaining how he engineered wicked backward-facing barbs that lock into flesh, making it impossible to pull these arrows out once they find their mark. Coat those tips in poison, and they become instruments of death. Masaru beams with pride, boasting that once they strike, the venom surges through the prey's veins while they're trapped by the steel. Adelina calls his creation straight-up ruthless, but Masaru fires back that survival demands brutality. Before the chief cuts in to rave about how much the hunters love this new arsenal, Masaru heads to the training grounds to check on his Trantwood masterpieces, specifically asking about his special warm-colored bow that packs enough raw power to put every other weapon to shame. The hunters just stare back with awkward looks until one finally confesses the truth. That bowstring is so insanely stiff, it's practically unbendable. Even their strongest warrior couldn't budge it, leaving Masaru realizing their stats are just too low. So he steps up, grabs the bow, and prepares to show them how it's really done. He lets fly, and the arrow screams through the air with the force of a god-tier projectile. It doesn't just shatter the target, it blasts right through and levels a massive tree in the distance, leaving Masaru realizing he accidentally infused the shot with overwhelming magical energy. Panic starts to stir as villagers report seeing something bizarre and terrifying deep within the woods. Suddenly, the emergency bells shriek through the air. Demon bears are storming the northern cliffs, and they're headed straight for the village. Total chaos erupts as everyone screams about the approaching monsters, sending Masaru into a state of pure shock. Masaru tries to claim it's just a coincidence, but that bone-chilling roar sounds way too familiar. Luckily, the chief declares that this is the moment they've been training for, and they're ending this threat right now. The chief looks Masaru in the eye and asks if he can take the beast down, and with a determined nod, Masaru prepares for war. He barks out orders to evacuate the weak, while the warriors rally at the wall, leading the hunting team into the fray just as Adelina and May sprint onto the scene. Masaru gives them a reassuring pat, trusting them to guard their home while he's gone, his eyes burning with the resolve to protect his people. Today marks the beginning of their most dangerous mission yet, the demon bear hunt. The squad marches toward the northern cliffs as Adelina promises a worried May that Masaru will return in one piece. Sensing May's anxiety, Adelina snaps her out of it, but May just smiles, putting all her faith in Masaru's strength. Masaru locks eyes with a massive four-armed beast that looks absolutely livid, and he's 100% right. He realizes just how pissed off it is the moment an arrow pierces the monster's eye. He glances back at his archers, who are already lining the cliff tops and ready to rain hell. The plan is simple. Bait the beast and drag it straight into a lethal, custom-made kill zone. As the squad provides cover fire with his handcrafted bows, Masaru plays the ultimate high-stakes game of bait. If he slips up, he's dead and the village is history, so he braces himself as the monster lunges. The beast's wounds are barely scratches, and Masaru realizes the real nightmare is just starting. It's a frantic race for survival, but the bear is closing the gap way faster than he expected. It catches him off guard, forcing him to strike back just to stay alive in the heat of the moment. Confusion hits him. Was the bear even weakened by those arrows? It sure doesn't look like it. Then it hits him. It must be the lethal toad venom he coated the arrows with finally kicking in. This poison was a total wild card, hitting every enemy differently, And man, it worked way better than he ever imagined. The squad rained down a relentless hail of arrows until the beast let out one final blood-curdling shriek and hit the dirt. Cheers erupted from the group as they celebrated finally taking down the unstoppable monster. Masaru checked his stats, and seeing that massive XP dump confirmed it. The demon bear was officially dead. The hunters were eager to celebrate, and Masaru told them to clear the traps so they could finally enjoy the safety they'd prayed for. But as Masaru stared at the corpse, his gut twisted with a bad feeling, and he screamed at the rabbit folk to stay back. He realized in a flash that this wasn't the same bear they had been tracking. Suddenly, a second shadow loomed behind him, delivering a brutal punch that launched Masaru through the air. The beast smashed through a tree to get to him, leaving Masaru reeling in agony and wondering how there could possibly be two of them. He spotted a gruesome gash on the bear's skull as he desperately scrambled to avoid its lethal strikes. The squad opened fire, but the bear actually swatted the arrows away, leaving everyone absolutely paralyzed with fear. It let out a deafening roar and lunged at the group, forcing them to scramble and ready another wave of fire. As the monster closed the gap, Masaru took aim and let an arrow fly. The shot hit home, sinking deep into the beast's massive arm. He started to wonder. Was this thing trying to fight him off just so it could make a run for it? A hunter screams at Masaru, calling him a reckless fool for fighting with those lethal wounds and begging him to run for his life. As the beast lets out a deafening roar, Masaru drags himself up, knowing that as long as he can move, those hidden traps might still give him the edge. He sprints toward the trap zone, but the monster cuts him off at every turn, slamming into him with bone-crushing force. He collapses against a tree, gasping for air as he realizes just how far he has to go. The traps are still 100 meters out, and his healing magic is barely keeping him together. If he could just get 60 seconds of peace, he could turn this around. Despair washes over him as he realizes this might be the end, right when he finally found people he truly cared about and wanted to protect. Covered in blood, he starts to apologize to everyone he's letting down, when suddenly a voice cuts through the air, mocking him for giving up so easily. Adelina explodes onto the scene, her massive blade carving through the air as she taunts him, calling him pathetic for someone who's supposed to be strong. She smirks, declaring that she's more than happy to crash this party. Masaru stares in disbelief, his mind racing as he wonders how she even found him. She demands a thank you for saving his skin, but admits she isn't the only one to thank. It was someone else's tip-off that got her here just in time. He flashes back to May, telling Adelina she had absolute faith in him. Right before Adelina demanded to know what was really on her mind. May confessed that they'd always been treated like kids, but she refused to let Masaru just boss them around. She wanted a real partnership. She didn't care if she was overstepping, and Adelina agreed, reminding her that Masaru always said a little misunderstanding never hurt anyone. But panic gripped May as she revealed the truth. She'd heard two terrifying roars echoing through the forest, and one of them wasn't the bear. She prayed it was just a nightmare, but the terrifying reality sent shivers down her spine. Desperate, she begged Adelina to save Masaru, and while Masaru felt he owed them his life, Adelina snapped that they needed to survive this nightmare first, especially since that beast was still breathing after a lethal blow. Masaru stared in shock, screaming at Adelina to run for her life, but she just laughed, asking if he really thought a girl like her would walk into hell without an army at her back. Right on cue, a massive wave of bunny folk swarmed out from the shadows. They lunged at the bear with sharpened spears, and as Masaru watched his friends risk everything to stand by his side, he could barely hold back his tears. Bill lured the monster toward the edge of the cliff, where a lethal trap waited just a few grueling meters away. They surged forward, but out of nowhere, disaster struck. A lethal strike was inches away from tearing through Adelina. Masaru blurred into motion, blocking the hit and shouting his gratitude to the brave warriors, before declaring that he would take it from here. Thanks to the precious time they bought him, his wounds had finally knit back together, and he realized with a surge of joy that he wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. With his power restored, he prepared his final move just as the bear lunged for the kill. Masaru planted his feet and vaulted directly into the beast's gaping maw, slamming his blade right into its face. He nearly plummeted into the abyss himself, but in a split-second gamble, he hurled his weapon toward the massive ballista trigger. The trap snapped shut with a thunderous roar. The earth suddenly gives way, dragging both Masaru and the beast screaming into the pit. He felt a strange respect for the creature's will to live, offering a silent apology as they both hurtled toward the bottom. With a thunderous crash, the monster slams into the very bottom of the trap. Terrified, Adelina screams Masaru's name, desperate for any sign that he's still alive. She finds him sprawled out in the dirt, and he just looks up, joking about why she's acting like he's a ghost. Overwhelmed with relief, she flashes a smile before decking him right in the face. He groans in pain, but she snaps that it's his fault for scaring her half to death, while the rest of the crew celebrates his miracle survival. Adelina is stunned. He actually summoned a massive log mid-air to block the bear's lethal claws. That single chunk of wood was his total lifeline, and as he praises his trusty magic, his mind immediately shifts back to the beast. The team confirms the monster has drawn its last breath. They've taken down a second demon bear, and the group erupts in pure, unbridled joy. But without warning, Masaru hits the dirt. They rush to his side, only to realize the hero has literally fallen asleep from total exhaustion. Adelina just rolls her eyes, huffing that this is just so typical of him. Even so, she can't help but admit the guy worked his absolute heart out. She orders the squad back to the village, and as they carry their sleeping hero home, his eyes finally start to flutter open. Hera turns to Victinius, beaming with pride over the incredible job Masaru did out there. Victinius just shrugs it off as destiny, asking if Hera finally accepts that this kid is the goddess's chosen one. Hera calls her out, asking if she totally lost her cool when that demon bear almost ripped Masaru apart, because seeing a goddess abandon all restraint for a mortal is absolutely insane. Even before the carnage started, Victinius actually descended just to give Masaru a pep talk, leaving Hera wondering what makes this guy so special. Hera's gaze pierces right through her, demanding an explanation for this bizarre behavior. Victinius looks away, playing it off like it's no big deal since she didn't technically interfere. But Hera notes that Masaru is her polar opposite, which is exactly why she can't stop watching him. She insists she isn't breaking any divine laws, but admits her motives have shifted since the very beginning, leaving Victinius completely stunned. Hera warns her to keep her emotions in check, but with the beast dead and peace restored, the city's massive expansion is finally moving forward, and she can't wait to see that grand statue of Victinius finished. Hera shouts that it's time to raise a glass to their glorious victory, and Victinius is all in for the celebration. Her mind is already racing with visions of how this brand new world is going to evolve. The two goddesses clink their cups together in a silent toast to the future. Meanwhile, Masaru is having the time of his life partying with the rabbit tribe. But just a few days later, he rallies the crowd, declaring that since the demon bear is history, they need to kick their development plan into overdrive. The villagers are completely stunned, whispering and wondering if they're even ready for such a massive project. One man steps forward, confused about the land borders, while another demands to know what all those strange lines and partitions Masaru drew on the ground are supposed to be. Masaru stands his ground, announcing that construction starts right here, and begins pointing out the exact zones he's designated for their new housing. He explains that these white lines are the boundaries for their new foundations, and when they ask why they can't just build wherever they want, Masaru prepares to drop some serious logic on them. He reveals a genius concept from his old world called urban planning, designed to master the flow of the city and keep the peace by separating homes from noisy workshops. This strategy is a fortress against fires and crime, making the streets safer than ever, and the chief agrees, but Masaru isn't done yet. Now that the slimes are secure, he demands they build massive underground sewers, declaring that not a single house will be built until the pipes are laid. Adelina jumps in, remembering his lecture where he described a complex network of canals to flush away waste and rainwater. Masaru gives her a nod, insisting this is the only way to stay clean. But when someone asks if they can just dump waste anywhere, Masaru shuts them down with a roar. He warns that if they fail, the entire city will rot, sparking a plague that will wipe every single one of them out. This city is their future, and he refuses to let hidden dangers destroy their new home before it even begins. The crowd is paralyzed with fear, and Masaru admits that he's just as worried as they are. He's already staked out the first residential zone, decreeing that every home must fit perfectly within his master plan. But the people panic, shouting that the plot is tiny as a tent. How are their massive families supposed to fit in there? Masaru just smiles and tells them to relax because these aren't tents. They're building luxurious two-story stone mansions. The crowd freezes, their minds blown as they ask, what on earth is a two-story stone house? They're losing their minds with excitement, wondering if this is a dream. Could they really be living in such high-class luxury? Masaru asks Adelina if these houses are common, but she reveals that even in big cities, stone buildings are reserved for businesses, not regular people. She explains that only the highest nobles live like that, while everyone else rots in straw huts. And suddenly, Masaru realizes why the rabbit folk are celebrating like they just won the lottery. The crew is absolutely fired up and ready to tear into the construction right this second. Masaru drills them on proper site movement before pointing to the massive pillars he's already hoisted into place. The workers realize these partitions are the bones of their new homes, but Masaru cuts them off. They have to get every single pillar standing before the sun goes down. The crowd is stunned by this bizarre new method, questioning if it's even safe. But Masaru reveals the secret. Every beam is precision cut to lock together like an unbreakable puzzle. He orders them to follow his leads to the letter, and just as the chief asks about the stone reinforcements, Mei's eyes light up. She knows her secret material is about to change the game. Masaru finally unveils the mystery, a powerful blend of hemp, lime, and beach sand known as plaster. This stuff turns ordinary stone into an impenetrable fortress and can even create solid concrete roads, leaving Adelina to wonder if Masaru's past life was way more intense than he's letting on. Masaru admits he learned these tricks back in the countryside, where he spent his days delivering supplies and soaking up every secret the master craftsman had to offer. It wasn't his primary gig, but those legendary techniques are exactly what's letting him build a god-tier city from scratch. He's crafting everything they need, even if some of his old methods were, let's say, legally questionable. But he quickly reassures a worried Mei with a comforting hand on her shoulder. He confesses he might have pushed the limits back then, but as long as it helps his people, he'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. He springs to his feet, barking out orders for everyone to start the heavy lifting while he gears up the next phase of the project. Just as he turns to leave, Mei shouts out to stop him in his tracks. She screams with pure hope, declaring that they're going to build the most magnificent city ever seen. Masaru flashes her a confident thumbs up, a silent promise that he's going to make it happen. The entire crew jumps into action, raising the massive framework before stacking the heavy stones into place. After a month of grueling labor, the house stands finished. And just as Masaru celebrates his perfect plan, Mei arrives to show off the new installation, only to be baffled by Masaru's strange new prototype. He gives her a mysterious look and says words aren't necessary, but Mei instantly recoils in horror, calling him a total creep and leaving Masaru absolutely devastated. Shaking off the insult, he stands tall and declares that if the test run goes smoothly, they're going into full-scale mass production immediately. He grabs the prototype to inspect the craftsmanship while Mei follows, marveling at how their tiny settlement has exploded into a massive city thanks to everyone's blood and sweat. But the work never stops, and as he plans out the new farms and industrial zones, Mei suddenly screams out that he finally understands the warning she's been trying to give him. Masaru gently pats her head, promising her that he won't carry the world on his shoulders alone. This time, they're in this fight together. But the peaceful moment is shattered when a messenger sprints up, begging Masaru to follow him right away. Chaos has broken out at the main gate, and while Masaru fears a supply shipment went wrong, the panicked rabbit man tells him the situation is far more dire. A group of humans has been found collapsed and unconscious right outside their walls, sending Masaru into a frantic dash to treat their bloody injuries. The rabbit folk whisper in shock, realizing the terrifying rumors were true, though they can tell at a glance that these strangers are nothing like Masaru. Clad in battered heavy armor, these mystery warriors look like they were violently exiled from the nearby port town. The truth finally comes to light. These men are the elite knights of the Grados kingdom. A high-stakes meeting is called where a man named Fried reveals he's a member of the legendary King's Guard, introducing his comrade Distar and their fallen brother, Gold. Fried pours out his gratitude for the rescue, leaving Masaru wondering if these warriors are even more powerful than Lancelot himself. Fried was absolutely blown away by their high-level healing magic, and with newfound respect, he demanded to know Masaru's name. Masaru dropped his name like it was nothing, leaving the room in a heavy, suffocating silence. Masaru tried to play it cool as a simple adventurer, but Adelina screamed for him to shut up, blurting out that he held a legendary title from the goddess herself. Masaru froze, panicking that she was about to ruin everything just like she did before. Desperate to change the subject, she quickly introduced herself and bowed, revealing she was the niece of the legendary Lancelot. Fried's jaw hit the floor, admitting that the tales of Lancelot's heroic deeds had echoed all the way to the royal capital. He acknowledged her as a vital ambassador of their alliance, noting her strong bond with the Beastman chief. The chief nodded, confessing they originally feared a human invasion on their new city, but Frida hung his head in shame for causing such a mess, while the chief insisted that helping those in need is the code of the beastman. But the chief credited Masaru for proving that not all humans are trash, before demanding to know why they had ventured so deep into the treacherous mountains. Fried revealed the truth. They were on a mission from the king himself to hunt down a terrifying mutated beast. Adelina whispered to Masaru, asking if he meant that nightmare-inducing demon bear. But Fried corrected her. Their target was a six-legged, pitch-black monstrosity called the One-Horned Demon. Suddenly, a memory flashed in Masaru's mind, and he slowly raised his hand to speak. He warned them to brace themselves because that monster had already been ripped apart and eaten by an even deadlier beast. Fried went pale, asking if he meant the demon bear that had decimated his squad and left them wandering lost in the woods for a brutal week. Masaru dropped the ultimate bombshell. The demon bear was dead, and the forest was finally safe. Fried bolted upright, screaming in disbelief at what he was hearing. He roared that the bear could wipe out the king's elite guards in a heartbeat. But Masaru just shrugged and offered to show him the cold, dead corpses of both the bear and the horse. Fried trembled, asking if Masaru actually had the proof, and if he was serious about showing them the remains. And Masaru didn't blink as he confirmed it all. Fried offers a stiff apology for his outburst, but Masaru is instantly suspicious of his bizarre intensity, despite his own royal orders to slay the beast. Looking at Fried's desperate face, Masaru realizes this mutated horse is a gold mine, and these knights are definitely hiding a secret agenda. Out of nowhere, Fried makes his move, demanding that Masaru hand over the carcass right then and there. Masaru doesn't blink, stone cold refusing the request while he analyzes every twitch of the knights' faces. A smirk creeps across Masaru's lips, and Adelina knows instantly he's got these guys exactly where he wants them. Masaru explains that while the bear mangled the neck, the rest of the body is a treasure trove of rare, high-grade materials. He lists the loot: unbreakable leg bones, skin soft enough for royalty, and of course that mysterious valuable horn. The second Masaru mentions the horn, Fried's eyes widen and his entire face completely transforms. Masaru instantly catches the reaction. That horn is the ultimate prize, so he plays hard to get, claiming he's not ready to let it go. He hints that a massive pile of gold might change his mind, and while Distar starts to blow a fuse, Fried shuts him up and agrees. Fried admits these materials would fetch a king's ransom on the open market and reveals there's a massive bounty on the line too. He makes a desperate offer. They'll pay Masaru's asking price and throw the entire bounty reward on top of it just to close the deal. Masaru pieces it together. The king himself wants that horn, and these knights will sacrifice anything just to say they finished the job. Fame and authority are their real goals, the kind of status gold can't buy, so money is the last thing on their minds. Now Masaru's mind is racing, plotting exactly how to bleed these desperate knights for every single coin they've got. The massive reward set off alarm bells, so he decided to play it smart and make the knights owe him a massive favor instead. He suddenly stands up and declares he's heading straight to Grados with them. The entire group is left staring in total shock and confusion. Masaru demands they act as witnesses while he haggles, making it clear that if the deal isn't perfect, he's taking his loot and walking. Fried promises the kingdom's riches will be enough, while Distar wonders if they can actually get him an audience with the king. They've handled power players before, but they warn him it won't be easy, yet Masaru just tells them not to underestimate his hustle. He reveals his secret weapon. His past life as a professional broker means high-stakes haggling is literally in his blood. The plan is set, but Masaru has to tell Mei the truth. Once the knights are rested, he's hitting the road again. And let's just say Mei is not happy about him leaving. Masaru swears it's a safe business trip with zero fighting, but Adelina shuts him down, demanding an apology before grilling him on his work. He reveals he's building massive boats that are actually house walls, and he's working like a madman to finish before he leaves. He checks on the bed shipments, and Adelina confirms they're delivered, though the mountain slope has become their top priority. Masaru explains his master plan. That spot is going to be a legendary public bathhouse, or maybe even a luxury hot spring. He insists that with the furniture finished, there's one final, non-negotiable masterpiece that he simply could never leave behind. Adelina sighs at his weird lingo while the others finally realize he's just building one giant tub. Once this project wraps up, those freezing cold showers are history, and Mei is absolutely losing it with excitement. Adelina points out that massive baths like this are usually for the elite, and keeping one running would be a total nightmare since they'd need a mountain of firewood every single day. But Masaru drops a bombshell. This isn't just a bath, it's a natural hot spring. The girls look completely lost, forcing Masaru to ask if they even know what a hot spring is. He breaks it down. It's boiling water heated by volcanic energy deep underground, and once they crack the earth open, they can pipe that liquid gold straight into the bathhouse. May is skeptical, wondering if Masaru actually has the power to dig up something that massive from the depths. Adelina is convinced he'll just find basic well water, but Masaru knows he struck gold with this discovery. Thanks to a tip from rabbit hunters about a lava river, he used his insane 3D map skill to pinpoint the exact location of the hidden water source. He's still brainstorming how to blast through the dirt. But Adelina shifts gears, reminding him that this space was supposed to be for the goddess's statue and her grand shrine. She calls him out for forgetting his promise and mocks the absolutely clueless look on his face. Masaru is down for the statue but thinks a shrine is overkill, which totally annoys the girls since they insist the goddess needs a proper home. Masaru brushes it off, figuring the goddess is in no rush to show up anyway. He suggests waiting until their skills are higher to build the shrine, promising Adelina he'll just ask the goddess for her opinion directly. Out of nowhere, Victinius manifests and announces she'd actually love for them to start building it right now. She shamelessly admits to ditching her work just to hang out, and Masaru can't believe how much she's slacking off. Adelina snaps, slapping him across the face for daring to speak so casually to a literal goddess. Both girls are absolutely livid, but Victinius just smiles, waving off the insult because Masaru is her chosen envoy, meaning his rudeness is officially forgiven. Adelina's eyes light up, gushing over how the goddess's legendary mercy is even more incredible than the stories say. Masaru cuts to the chase, asking why she's really here, and she reveals she's kept a promise to introduce him to someone special. Out of nowhere, a mysterious woman named Isla Saphira manifests and offers him a warm greeting. Masaru's jaw drops as he wonders, could this stunning newcomer actually be Victinia's sister? Saphira confirms the bond and thanks him, eager to watch the world evolve under his care. And while she's the picture-perfect goddess, Masaru looks back at Victinia's and seriously doubts they share the same bloodline. He gives Saphira a proper welcome, admitting he has a massive idea sparked by that cryptic magic message she sent earlier. Victinius shuts down the heavy talk, insisting they start with something a lot less complicated. In a flash, Saphira conjures a full table and chairs for the group, leaving Masaru wondering if she's just abusing the dimensional storage skill. Every cup and seat is perfectly placed, and Saphira explains that people have the dimensional storage skill all wrong. It's way more than just a backpack. She reveals that in this world, nothing is set in stone, and skills are only limited by the user's own imagination. Masaru realizes his own common sense might be holding his powers back, but he's got no clue how to break those mental chains. Saphira calls him out, pointing out that he's already breaking the rules with his production skills, and she's counting on him to keep pioneering the future of magic. Victinius cuts the nerd talk, demanding they focus on the most important thing, her giant statue, while Masaru bluntly asks if the thing is even necessary. Victinius and Saphira didn't hesitate for a second. They were both completely on board. Victinius snaps at him, asking if he forgot her rainy season promise, while Saphira demands her own statue too. Masaru is floored. Is he really stuck carving masterpieces of both these girls? They pressure him to start right now, but he insists he needs reference shots from the capital first. Thinking fast, Victinius pulls up her status screen and starts firing over selfies with Saphira following suit. Masaru scrolls through the shots, trying to pick just one, until he spots a seriously spicy shot of Victinius and smashes that save button instantly. He bolts for his life as Victinius screams at him to delete that photo right now. But Masaru just laughs, shouting back that it's for research, and teases that if she'd just give him her measurements, he wouldn't need the scandalous pic. He swears he's purely professional and his mind is totally out of the gutter. Yeah, right. He doubles down, telling them everyone needs to pitch in. So how about sending even more photos for the cause? Victinius is absolutely livid that he'd use such dirty tricks on a maiden, while Saphira calls him a total degenerate. Masaru just calls them naive, pushing Victinius to demand that Saphira lay down the law. Saphira doesn't hesitate. She charges up and blasts a titanic wave of fire straight at his head. Masaru's jaw drops. The sheer raw density of Saphira's mana makes his own magic look like child's play. The explosion is cataclysmic, sending a blinding pillar of light into the heavens that leaves every onlooker trembling in fear. Adelina stares at the carnage, terrified that there's nothing left of Masaru but ash. She and May rush into the smoke only to find he actually dodged it. Adelina can't believe the guts on this guy, while May tears into him for being such a massive idiot. But Masaru is genuinely clueless, wondering why they're so mad when they should be proud of their incredible bodies. To him, that fire blast was a total overreaction. He's completely baffled as a crowd starts to swarm, desperate to know what just caused that massive explosion. Adelina screams for everyone to settle down, revealing the mind-blowing truth. These visitors are the literal goddesses who created their entire world. The crowd stands frozen in shock, whispers spreading about the chaos at Masaru's manor while everyone gushes over the goddess's radiant beauty, making Masaru feel like the butt of a cosmic joke. In an instant, the entire crowd drops to their knees, bowing in total reverence to the divine beings before them. Victinia is visibly squirming under the pressure, and Saphira admits they're totally out of their element since they only ever visit the mortal realm for massive festivals. Masaru tells Victinia to snap out of it and drop the bombshell already, but she just sighs, admitting he's probably going to hate what she has to say. Then she finally asks the real question. Does he still have those delicious crabs left? Because they're dying for a taste! Masaru's jaw hits the floor when he realizes she actually bragged to Saphira about his secret stash of food. It turns out they're only here for snacks and statues, leaving Masaru convinced that both these goddesses are absolutely hopeless. Realizing there's no escape, he plays along, announcing to the crowd that he's just received sacred orders from the heavens. Since they've got nothing to trade yet, they're launching a massive hunt for rare, undiscovered ingredients that no one has ever seen. Victinia tries to shut him down, but he brushes her off, promising a perfect plan that kicks off with a massive expansion. He orders the people to conquer the mountain wasteland, transforming the empty terrain into lush farms and massive plantations. This is just the beginning. They're going to build these farms across the entire city to make sure no one ever goes hungry again. He splits the construction crew, sending half to scout the wild forests for food and poison, ordering them to report back to him if they find anything mysterious. He rallies the crowd to move out immediately, claiming it's the goddess's holy will as the workers scramble into action. Victinia snaps that she never asked for this, but Masaru fires back, reminding her she was the one craving a gourmet feast. He explains it's the first move toward total self-sufficiency. But Victinius is skeptical, questioning if building massive plantations across the city is even possible. Masaru shuts her down, arguing that these green spaces will kill the noise, flood the streets with sunlight, and make the whole city look breathtaking. He's even planning to dot the landscape with elegant gazebos, creating the perfect spots for anyone to kick back and relax. Since the home center handles gardening, they're going all out, building majestic statues and sacred shrines to complete the look. The more stunning the city gets, the more likely a certain goddess will want to drop by and have the time of her life. Victinius's eyes light up, asking if this means endless crab feasts, while Saphira beams, telling Masaru they're putting all their faith in him. Masaru realizes he's fully committed now. He's going to turn this place into a peaceful sanctuary where they can finally find true rest. Overwhelmed with emotion, they stare him down until a flustered Masaru promises a crab banquet every single time they visit, sending them into a frenzy of joy. But then Masaru drops the bomb. In exchange for the feast, he needs a massive favor. They immediately get suspicious, and Saphira warns him not to try anything weird like touching them to understand them. But Masaru tells her to pipe down and listen. He clarifies that he just needs answers about that mysterious magic she brought up back when they first crossed paths. She agrees to talk, but only after they've stuffed themselves with crab, leaving Victinius wondering what her role in all this will be. Masaru promises to send word when the time is right, and though she calls it shady, she agrees to show up without interfering in his business. Masaru reassures her and tells her to just wait for the signal as he prepares to march to the capital once his team recovers, ready for things to get ugly if negotiations fail. Having the goddess of victory as his ultimate ace was non-negotiable, and back in the capital of Great Us, a knight rushes to the king with news that Deistar has finally returned. The king brushes off the formalities, demanding only one thing. Did they secure the legendary horn of the mutated beast or not? 2 weeks pass as Masaru and Freed finally reach the massive gates of Grados, the continent's most powerful kingdom, where Masaru is absolutely wiped out after choosing to sprint the entire 7-day journey on foot rather than sit in a carriage. He thinks back to the Rabbit Fork chief, who gave him the green light to handle this high-stakes negotiation however he saw fit. Masaru struggled with the idea of shaking hands with the man who enslaved his friends, But the chief reminded him that even enemies have their reasons. He explained that while the king's expansion was brutal, they couldn't let the shadows of the past consume their future. There was no room for poisoning the hearts of the children with old grudges or bitter envy. The chief had only one command for the deal: make sure everyone's interests are protected. Remembering the pure hearts of the rabbit folk is exactly why Masaru is doing this. But he's snapped out of his trance when Freed demands to know if he's even listening. Freed lays out the plan. They're heading straight to the castle for an audience with the king that Diastar already set up. But Masaru is easily distracted by the exotic market fruits, forcing a stressed Freed to remind him of the mission before sending him off to wait while the final formalities are settled. Freed is left baffled when Masaru suddenly asks for the location of the local adventurers guild. With a terrifying cold smirk, Masaru reveals he needs to dig up some intel before he faces the king head-on. Once Freed leaves, Masaru steps into a guild hall packed with warriors who look like they've survived 1,000 wars. The receptionist flashes a smile, asking if he's there to post a high-ranked quest or take one on. Masaru boldly declares he's ready to dive into the life of an adventurer, leaving the receptionist completely stunned. He starts grilling her about the massive payout for a rare one-horned mutant and demands the market rates for a whole list of deadly monsters. She hands him off to an expert who asks if he's already sitting on a gold mine, and though Masaru freezes for a second, he just flashes a mysterious grin when the man calls it a rookie's curiosity. The staffer reveals the price cards: common loot for bronze, magic users for silver, and dragons for 100 gold. But mutated beasts are in a league of their own. These monsters are forged from raw magic and are strong enough to slaughter the king's elite guards. Their parts are so precious they've triggered brutal wars. The guild rarely sees them since they usually go to massive auctions where a single tooth costs thousands, and Masaru realizes his haul is worth a staggering 100 million. He's absolutely floored. And while the man thinks he's just realized he's filthy rich, Masaru plays it cool and asks for the price of every single part. With his head spinning from the massive numbers, Masaru finally finds himself standing before the towering royal castle. Freed eyes him suspiciously since he's been giggling like a madman the whole way back. But Masaru just shrugs it off, saying he's just pumped to finally face the king. Freed leans in and begs him not to cause a scene, making Masaru wonder why everyone treats him like a walking disaster when he's totally innocent. The guards order him to drop his gear while Freed steps forward, formally announcing their arrival to the crown with full honors. They march into the grand hall where the king sits, flanked by his elite guards and a mysterious advisor. From his high throne, the king gazes down and questions if this kid is really the legend Freed wouldn't stop talking about. Masaru is taken aback by the king's overwhelming presence, but he quickly steels his nerves. He can't show a single flicker of weakness here. The advisor screams at him to bow down, but Masaru, knowing he holds the ultimate power move, simply refuses to kneel. Instead of bowing, Masaru steps right up and introduces himself directly to the king. The crowd gasps in horror, begging him to shut his mouth, but the king just smirks, revealing himself as Axion, the absolute ruler of the human race and the king of Grados. Axion actually loves the kid's guts, laughing off the disrespect because he's having a surprisingly legendary day. But he drops a chilling warning. If Masaru ruins his mood, the consequences will be a total nightmare. With the tension thick, the king commands Freed to step forward and deliver the full report. As the details come out, the king learns the beastmen are building a mountain city. They've annihilated a mutated monster, and Masaru was the one tasked with harvesting its nearly indestructible remains. Axion nods in approval, clearly impressed by the incredible news Freed brought back. Suddenly, Masaru reaches into his pack and slams the severed head of the mutated horned beast right in front of the king. The king's eyes go wide. It's the exact trophy he'd given up on ever finding. He calls it a miracle and promises Freed a massive reward, while a frantic attendant barks at Masaru to hand the head over as a humble offering. But Masaru just shrugs it off and flat-out refuses to let it go. The king is stunned, asking if Masaru expects him to bow, but Masaru fires back, telling the attendant that this head belongs to him and he's here for a business deal, not a charity donation. Intrigued by the kid's audacity, the king asks if he really thinks he can negotiate with royalty, and Masaru boldly replies he'll give the king whatever he wants, under one condition. The king has to accept the gift as a personal favor from Masaru himself. Axion questions if Masaru even understands the natural order of royalty, but admits he doesn't mind a subject trying to climb up and stand on his level. Then, his tone turns deadly as he roars that looking down on a king is a sin, unleashing a crushing pressure so terrifying it makes Lancelot's power look like a joke. Masaru instantly drops his guard, bowing low and apologizing for his big mouth, while the king sneers that being a ruler is more than just land. It's about being an unfathomable god-tier existence favored by the heavens themselves. Masaru nods along, but then drops a bombshell. He heard a rumor that during the king's own coronation, he was so shaking with nerves that he couldn't even remember his own name. Masaru found the whole situation hilarious, but the king's face went pale as the realization finally hit him. He scrambled off his throne, desperately begging Masaru to stop and explain himself. He demanded to know how a mere commoner could possibly know secrets that only his elite royal guard were ever told. Masaru just gave a smug smirk, teasing that a little bird told him, before announcing the real show was about to begin as a portal ripped open. Suddenly, the goddess Victinius stepped through, freezing the king and his entire court in pure, unadulterated terror as she demanded respect. The king stood there trembling, his mind racing as he wondered who, or what, Masaru actually was. He hadn't seen a divine being since he was 30 years old, and now he couldn't fathom why a goddess was standing in his own throne room. To make things crazier, Masaru was casually having a tea party with her, even as he joked that she should give him some credit for fixing her world. She just laughed it off, telling him he should be grateful she was in such a good mood. Then, she revealed that her sister was already working on Masaru's secret request, projecting a magical image right before his eyes. Masaru praised Saphira for being a useful goddess, unlike a certain someone, leaving Victinius offended as he explained she was there to assist him. Victinius worried about divine laws being broken, but Masaru assured her they had it handled, while the king begged for any shred of an explanation. Masaru coldly told the king to figure it out himself, leaving the ruler of the land desperate for just a single moment of his time. With a flick of her wrist, Victinius made the furniture vanish, apologizing for getting so caught up in the conversation. She looked at King Axion and remarked on how much he'd grown, but the king was only focused on one thing. What was Masaru's link to the divine? Victorinius scoffs that she's the goddess and he's just the help, but Masaru fires back, calling her a total slacker and insisting he was just doing her dirty work. Axion watches them bicker in disbelief, wondering if Masaru is some kind of holy messenger or a direct link to the heavens. Masaru shuts that down instantly, claiming he's just a normal guy, all while hiding the massive secret that he's actually a reincarnated soul. Not wanting to cause a scene, Masaru leans in and begs Victinius to give Axion a simple explanation that won't break the laws of the universe. Victinius drops a bombshell by calling Masaru her friend, leaving Axion absolutely speechless while Masaru breathes a sigh of relief. But then she gets confused. Is he a friend or a servant? Either way, she demands Axion cough up high-grade mithril for her favorite human. Masaru tries to reel her in, but Victinius is obsessed with her statue, completely ignoring the fact that he's in the middle of a high-stakes meeting with the king. Suddenly, Hera storms in to put a stop to the madness, grabbing Victinius and dragging her away for a serious scolding. Hera threatens her with a brutal 24-hour lecture, and as Victinius is hauled off, she screams at Masaru to have a massive crab feast ready for her next visit. With the goddess finally gone, Masaru turns to the king and tries to apologize for the absolute chaos that just unfolded. The king is visibly shaken, unable to wrap his head around the fact that a literal goddess treats a human like her best buddy. He clears the room for a private chat, slumping onto his throne and asking Masaru if there are any more heart-stopping surprises waiting for him. Masaru sighs, feeling totally drained by his divine friendship, as he explains the deal he made for the statue and the endless supply of crabs. The king's eyes light up, and he immediately asks Masaru to build a divine statue in his own kingdom, realizing he can use Masaru's god-tier connections. He vows to show his respect to the heavens and dives straight into the negotiations himself. The king drops a bombshell. He has one condition, and he's not taking no for an answer. He absolutely must have that horn. Masaru demands to know why the king is so obsessed with this mutated beast, and in response, the king pulls out a mysterious staff. He points to the relic, declaring that this is the key to everything. Legend says the founding king carved this scepter from a mutated beast's horn, creating a sacred bond with the nation that every new ruler is forced to uphold. The king's time is running out, and since these monsters are legendary rarities, he's racing against the clock to secure his successor's legacy. Every king before him fulfilled this holy duty, and he refuses to be the one who fails, so Masaru nods and prepares to talk business. But Masaru senses a dark secret and demands to inspect the staff, asking if it belonged to the previous king, only for the king to claim it's the original founder's relic. Without wasting a second, Masaru activates his appraisal skill to uncover the truth. The results are shocking. This isn't a mutated beast's horn at all, it's actually from a mythical unicorn. The king snaps, calling it pure nonsense, but Masaru stands his ground, declaring his appraisal is absolute and asking if the deal is dead. The king's eyes narrow in suspicion, accusing Masaru of playing games or trying to back out of the sale with a clever deception. Masaru fires back that a real deal is built on honor, and he'd never stab a business partner in the back. He's even willing to swear on Victinia's holy name. And finally, the king relents, admitting that while lies are common in politics, he'll choose to trust him. Even with the truth revealed, he's still dead set on buying that horn. The king pivots, offering market value since the tradition was a lie, and even though Masaru is stunned, the king knows that owning a relic from a friend of God will skyrocket his prestige to legendary heights. Masaru accepts the terms, and they seal the massive deal with a firm handshake. The king leans in, asking about Masaru's next move, and Masaru doesn't hesitate. He wants to raid the royal storehouse for every bit of surplus gear they've got, though the king says they'll have to finish the deal another time. The king then asks if he's staying long, and Masaru confirms he'll be scouting the capital and stocking up for a few days. To keep tabs on him, the king offers a personal guide, and Masaru gladly accepts the help. The king smirks, already knowing the perfect candidate, a knight who's definitely not your average soldier. Moments later, Masaru comes face to face with his new escort, a man named Zack. Zack is buried in paperwork and apologizes for the delay, leaving Masaru baffled. Why on earth is a knight acting like a stressed-out accountant or someone handling library-related tasks? Fried tells Zack to take a breather before asking if he's handy with tools. And Zack admits his father was a legendary engineer who taught him the trade of brickmaking and construction, sending Masaru into a frenzy of excitement as he lunges toward the confused knight. Masaru declares Zack is the man for the job and slams down a royal recommendation letter, announcing he'll be crashing at Zack's workshop for the duration of his stay, counting on Zack's support. The poor knight is left completely blindsided and questioning his own sanity. Once the confusion clears, Zack finally realizes what's happening, and Masaru tells him to drop the formalities and treat him like a brother. Zack nods, ready to roll with it, and says he's down to show Masaru the sights, but he's dying to know why Masaru is moving into his house, only for Masaru to bluntly admit he just wants a friend's discount on bricks. Zack is floored by the guy's audacity, but when Masaru claims the customer is king, Zack realizes this weirdo might actually be the savior his struggling shop needs, which turned out to be a total wreck of a building. Masaru is absolutely stunned, while Zack nervously tries to claim the place is just a little messy. When they step inside, Masaru realizes the shop is clearly failing, but he can't help but notice the bricks are actually incredible and expertly fired in the kilns. He fires up his appraisal skill and his jaw drops. These aren't just bricks, they're top-tier masterpieces with flawless edges. Made, proving Zack's father is a genius craftsman even if Zack is a total disaster at business. Masaru demands to see the old man immediately to give him a stern lecture, so Zack leads him toward the roaring kilns out back. They head around the back as Zack shouts that he's brought a customer, and suddenly, a voice bellows from deep inside the room as the old man wonders who's there. Zack gets shushed as he enters, but Masaru is hyped to finally meet a legendary master craftsman, only to find the forge stone cold because the old man is completely flat broke. They haven't just run out of cash for the business. They don't even have enough money to put a single scrap of food on the table for tomorrow. Masaru is absolutely disgusted, seeing a deadbeat who sacrificed his family's survival for his own obsession, while Zack stands there in total shell-shocked disbelief. When Zack demands to know where the workers went, his father casually admits they bolted after he stiffed them on 3 months of wages, and the crazy old man actually sounds proud of it. Terrified for his sister, Zack fears she's resorted to something desperate to keep them alive. but his father just vaguely says she'll handle things in the morning. It turns out she's just working for the competition to make ends meet, while Masaru silently scans the crumbling, pathetic state of the workshop. Zack finally snaps from the frustration and delivers a stinging slap to his father's face, forcing Masaru to step in and ask exactly how many bricks they have left. The old man has no clue what's even in the warehouse without his daughter Diana there, leaving Zack wondering how he's even kept the doors open without knowing his own inventory. Masaru drops a truth bomb that nobody would ever buy from such a dump, but the father stubbornly screams that the customers are just too blind to see his masterpiece bricks. Masaru fires back that business is built on trust and presentation. It doesn't matter how elite the product is if the shop looks like a total disaster zone. After demanding they organize the chaos to impress customers, Masaru heads for the inn while Zack rushes to find his sister, all while the shadow of a terrifying mutated beast looms over their plans for tomorrow. Masaru vows to slaughter the beast by dawn, and true to his word, the next day he's standing before the king to collect a massive pile of gold for his legendary victory. Staring at the mountain of reward money, Masaru wonders if it's too much, but the king insists he earned every coin before pivoting to a massive deal for the kingdom's surplus supplies. The king offers up 20% of the realm's entire grain reserve, and as Masaru agrees to the haul, the official sweetens the pot by offering a massive stash of soybeans. When Masaru hears they have a mountain of raw, unprocessed soybeans just sitting in storage, he doesn't hesitate for a single second. He buys the entire lot. Masaru and the king go head-to-head in a high-stakes negotiation until they finally strike a deal. Masaru's thrilled with the outcome, and the official admits it's a rare honor to have the king himself join the fray, giving the staff a golden opportunity to step up their game. Masaru plays it cool, telling the official to stick close to the throne while promising to return the moment the warehouse is restocked. Masaru questions the mountain of supplies, and the king reveals they're fueling massive military campaigns, confirming Masaru's darkest suspicions about the tragedies of the past. He fires back, calling these endless wars a massive waste of resources that the kingdom simply doesn't need. The king snaps back, claiming Masaru knows nothing of leadership, and that these conquests are the only way to make the realm thrive. Masaru warns him that expansion is meaningless if the kingdom rots from within and collapses under its own weight. The king scoffs, wondering why a divine messenger cares about politics. But Masaru stands tall, ready to drop one final piece of wisdom as he rises, staring the king down and declaring that true power means building a flourishing nation without ever shedding a drop of blood. He points to his own Beastman city as living proof and dares the king to witness the prosperity of the coast with his own two eyes. He pleads for peace, reminding the king that the gods love everyone and that unity is the only path forward. The king still won't budge, but Masaru shuts him down, declaring that any nation built on prejudice is destined for ruin. Suddenly, the room goes cold as Masaru burns a hole through the king with a lethal glare. The king and his official are left frozen in absolute terror. Masaru marches out, ending the meeting on his terms and demanding his payment in cold, hard gold. The moment Masaru left, the king turned to his advisor, his voice heavy as he questioned if his entire reign had been one giant mistake. The official insisted the king always acted for his people, but he couldn't deny it. Masaru's words hit like a freight train, and the king felt that truth deep in his soul. He realized Masaru's arrival was a divine sign from the gods, and if those words were true, they'd be fools not to follow his lead. With the coastal city and the beastmen on the horizon, the official worried about the royal guard, but the king just smirked because the answer was staring them right in the face. He declared they didn't need shields or blades for this mission. From now on, they'd be trading their swords for pens. Meanwhile, Zack found Masaru wandering the capital and joked that he looked like a total amateur in the castle. But Masaru was beaming with joy because he'd just dominated the negotiations and gotten everything he came for. Zack couldn't believe the absolute nerves on this guy for talking back to a king, but Masaru just brushed it off and asked if Zack's sister was finally back. Zack warned him to stay on his best behavior around her, but Masaru insisted he was the peak of logic, even if Zack was terrified of his friend's big mouth. They stepped inside the house where Zack's sister was waiting, and she introduced herself with a warm smile as Diane. Correcting herself to Diana, she welcomed Masaru with open arms, telling him she didn't mind the intrusion at all. Masaru's jaw dropped at the mountain of supplies in the warehouse, and Diana explained that managing her father's massive hoard was a grueling, never-ending task. While she finished the paperwork, Masaru got permission to explore, and his heart raced as he realized he was standing in a literal gold mine of gear. Every single piece was masterfully handcrafted, and Masaru's mind began racing with all the ways he could put this loot to use. He picked up a mysterious piece of metal, unable to tell if it was steel or ceramic, until Diana revealed it was something far more legendary. Her father had engineered this miracle material during his soldier days. It was feather-light and indestructible, but so rare and expensive that it was practically a myth. Masaru presses for the truth behind their massive stock, and Diana reveals a bombshell. She kicked her own father out for trying to sell their home, leaving them buried in his massive debts. Zack prays for a miracle customer to wipe the slate clean, and Masaru's gears start turning. He realizes right then that his pockets are deep enough to buy every single item in the entire shop. Diana looks to him for an answer, but Masaru drops a hint that he has a much bigger plan to discuss. He leans in and asks the unthinkable. "If I buy every last thing you have, do I get a discount?" Leaving them absolutely speechless. They practically jump for joy, promising a massive discount since clearing their inventory would finally kill that crushing debt. Masaru seals the deal instantly. He'll buy everything, but only if they agree to hear his secret proposal. Zack's gut is screaming that something is off, but Masaru just smiles, promising them an offer they can't refuse. Zack looks to Diana for guidance, and she decides they have to hear him out. Then Masaru drops the real bomb. He wants them to pack their bags and move to his city immediately. Zack loses it, calling the idea insane because leaving the capital is a massive gamble, especially with their father's drama hanging over them. But Diana sees the truth. Masaru wants them in that new Beastman city he's building. Masaru doesn't blink, confirming that he needs their skills to help turn his city into a powerhouse. He sweetens the pot with a dream deal. 3 square meals a day, endless work, and even a private workshop with a full crew for their father to pump out bricks. Zack can't believe his ears because the offer sounds way too good to be true, while Diana worries about moving to a city ruled by beastmen. She's terrified of being the only humans there, but Masaru reassures her that a girl named Adelina is already settled in, and he plans to recruit a whole army of human craftsmen soon. He then asks if they know any other struggling workers, promising he'll even get the king's personal blessing to bring them on board. With the king's backing, the risk vanishes, but Zack shivers when he sees a wickedly ambitious look cross Masaru's face. Masaru declares that things are about to get wild, and the city's growth will be unstoppable. He asks them if they can feel the hype, but when they just stare back in stunned silence, he doesn't miss a beat and keeps the pressure on. He warns them straight up. Without the right skills, mastering the city's secret techniques is impossible, so he tells them to think it over before pivoting back to the deal. To seal the contract, he offers a 10% discount, and once they agree, Masaru asks if he can settle the tab in pure gold. He offers to wipe out their entire debt and pay the rest in gold coins, mostly because he's sick of lugging that heavy treasure around. They're absolutely stunned, and Diana insists they settle it this second before their deadbeat dad causes more chaos, while Zack panics that the old man might buy another warehouse behind their backs, leaving Masaru with a sinking feeling in his gut. They reach a shop just as a man inside screams in a total rage, demanding to know who keeps banging on his door after hours. He rips the door open and sneers at Diana, asking if she's back to beg for more money, but she shuts him down instantly, declaring they're done with his loans for good. The creep's mind goes straight to the gutter as he suggests a different kind of payment, making Masaru and Zack's blood boil with fury. Masaru barks at him to just take the cash, while Zack vows to end him if he lays a finger on Diana, leaving the poor girl completely baffled by their sudden explosion. The man's eyes widen as he finally inspects the heavy pouch of gold sitting right under his nose. He's absolutely floored by the massive fortune the brick shop managed to scrape together. Diana declares the debt and interest are paid in full, and just as Zack starts to breathe a sigh of relief, the man drops a bombshell. It's still not enough. Zack panics, terrified their dad took out another secret loan, but the man tells them to pipe down before bringing up their rented warehouse. Diana is totally confused since they only use it for storage, and Zack snaps that every single bill has been paid on time. Then comes the nightmare. Their father remodeled the place without permission, hacking holes into the ceiling to build a secret bedroom, and the repair costs are absolutely insane. At that moment, all three of them explode in a fit of pure, unadulterated rage. Zack finally realized why his father had vanished from the house and the shop. The truth was right in front of him. Diana begged him to stay calm, while the group scrambled to figure out their next move. Masaru stepped up with a bold idea. Why not just reset everything to the way it used to be? Surprisingly, the man agreed and gave them the green light. By nightfall, Masaru was absolutely wiped out from scrubbing away the chaotic mess Zack's father had left behind in the warehouse. Diana felt terrible about the whole ordeal and apologized for the mountain of work he had to endure. Masaru just stretched his aching muscles and grinned, telling her it was no big deal. Besides, he knew the perfect way to blow off some steam. Zack panicked, warning Masaru not to start a riot in the capital unless he wanted the king's guards hunting them down. Masaru laughed it off, saying he had a way better plan than starting a fight. When Zack asked what he was plotting, Masaru dropped the bombshell. His grandmaster plan? A massive legendary shopping spree through the castle town until he dropped. He asked if they didn't find a shopping spree therapeutic, but Zack admitted it just made him a nervous wreck. Diana realized this was all for the Beastman city, and Masaru confirmed he was splitting the loot between his new city and himself. It was all part of his scheme to recruit elite craftsmen, and he couldn't wait to get started. With the city still being built, getting skilled workers to move there would be a total game changer. If he could flood the streets with top-tier goods, this nameless town could explode into a metropolis that puts the capital to shame. He told them to just imagine the potential, itching to get back to the construction site. Diana warned him that building a city was a whole different beast than running a tiny shop, and Masaru knew the road ahead would be brutal, but he didn't care. Building a city was a total blast, and he wouldn't waste his time if it wasn't fun. Diana sighed, mentioning how her dad just wanted to bake bricks while leaving all the stressful money matters to her. She fell silent for a moment, prompting Zack to ask if something was wrong. She quickly shook it off, insisting it was nothing at all. Then she asked if Masaru was still heading out tomorrow. When he confirmed he was leaving at dawn, he wondered why she was so curious. She begged him to swing by their shop so she and Zack could give him a VIP tour of the marketplace. They could even introduce him to their inner circle of master craftsmen, which Masaru thought was a brilliant way to network. But Zack suddenly grabbed his sister's shoulder, telling her to back off because Masaru was even crazier than their dad and should be left to his own devices. Diana brushed him off, desperate for a break from the boring paperwork and convinced that a day out with Masaru would be an absolute blast. Zack nods, knowing tomorrow is going to be absolute chaos, while Masaru decides to overhaul the warehouse before finally hitting the sack. The sun rises on a brand new day as the duo storms through every workshop in town, meeting the local masters and buying up everything in sight. Staring at the mountain of loot, Masaru is actually terrified by his own shopping spree, while Zack laughs that he's probably crashed the entire local economy with such a massive haul. When the Merchant Association demands a full inventory to check the market's stability, Zack asks if he just grabbed every single thing he liked, but Masaru smirks, ready to reveal his true prize. He rips open a portal and pulls out the legendary green goat, the infamous widow goat, leaving Zack absolutely speechless. But he's not done, revealing he also snagged 4 horned rabbits and a flock of wildcutter quails from the guild, all dangerous mutated beasts. Zack is losing his mind, demanding to know what he's thinking, but Masaru just smiles because he's going to farm them. These aren't just monsters. Those quails pump out 5 eggs every 3 days. The rabbits breed like crazy for a constant meat supply, and that goat produces high-quality milk. Finally, his dream of a monster ranch is becoming a reality, and Masaru couldn't look more satisfied with himself. Zack begs him to stay out of trouble, especially since Diana is likely moving to Masaru City, and he's torn apart with worry knowing he'll be stuck behind. Masaru blinks in total confusion and asks the obvious question. Wait, why wouldn't you be coming with us? Zack is baffled, but Masaru drops a bombshell. The king gave him the green light to recruit craftsmen, and a full elite unit from Grados is being stationed in the Beastman city to share their tech. Zack's jaw drops as he tries to process what this means for him. Masaru confirms the shocker. The unit's captain will also serve as the official ambassador, and Zack is the one chosen for the job. Masaru is thrilled to have a friend in high places, but Zack is paralyzed, knowing he can't say no to a direct royal decree. Seeing Zack's panicked face, Masaru hears the real problem. Zack just got a girlfriend. Masaru awkwardly suggests he'll find a new one in the Beastman City in no time, but Zack is absolutely horrified by the suggestion. Right at that moment, Diana comes sprinting toward them at full speed. It's rare to see her at the castle, but she's got big news. She's officially accepting Masaru's offer to move to the Beastman City. Masaru is over the moon. But Zack wonders if she really ran all this way just to say yes. Not even close. She's already here to sell off her shop and land to finalize the move. She charges straight for the Merchant Guild desk, leaving Masaru wondering if she's already run into a massive headache. She shoves a document into his hands, demanding he take a look immediately. Masaru scans the paper to find the guild's final cold-hearted evaluation of their property. But since the place is a total wreck and a garbage location, the news is brutal. They aren't getting a single cent. Instead, they're being slapped with massive demolition fees. Stunned by the scam, they storm the guild where Diana panics that Masaru is in over his head, but Zack reminds her that this man has stared down the king himself. When Masaru finally stomps back out, one look at his face tells them the negotiations were a total disaster. Pure rage radiates off him, and the group can tell he's about to snap. He explains that the guild wouldn't budge on the crumbling store's value, leaving Zack and Diana horrified by the skyrocketing costs, until Masaru declares he's handling the demolition his own way. As Masaru rips open a portal, a chill runs down Zack's spine, but Masaru just growls that he hasn't been this pissed off in a long, long time. He yanks out a monstrous, terrifying weapon and starts absolutely obliterating the store's walls. Dust clouds the air as Zack realizes Masaru isn't storming the guild with that morning star. He's turning this house into rubble. They never imagined he'd go full wrecking ball just to dodge those insane guild fees. With a thunderous roar, Masaru delivers another bone-shattering blow to the structure. He surveys the carnage, laughing that he finally found a use for the morning star he made for kicks, while Zack points out the noise is just Masaru's insane one-man demolition show. Zack warns that using a beast-slaying weapon on a house is total overkill, but Masaru just shrugs. The job is already done. It looks insane, but Masaru is swinging a massive morning star just to smash walls into reusable gravel. Zack finally sees the method to his madness. This man refuses to waste even a single pebble. First, they have to warn the neighborhood about the incoming chaos. Masaru even whipped up a high-tech soundproof barrier to keep the noise down and the dust from choking the streets. With these safeguards in place, Masaru claims the job is a cakewalk. Thanks to his recycling skills, he'll have this entire building leveled by tomorrow, leaving Zack absolutely stunned by the sheer scale of the work. Masaru knows Zack is going to be a high-ranking ambassador, so he figures a little manual labor will build some serious character. Luckily, Zack is actually eager to learn, and Masaru is ready to mold him into a pro. Suddenly, Zack's father arrives, announcing that the lumber is cut exactly to Masaru's specs. He calls Masaru over for an inspection, but he's completely blindsided to see Zack and Diana standing right there. Masaru reveals he's rushing the demolition to jump onto his next big project, which is exactly why he recruited Zack's legendary father. The old man is ready to start mass production, leaving Zack totally baffled about what crazy plan Masaru is cooking up now. Masaru isn't about to let the greedy merchant guild screw him over, so he's building a brand new shop just to sell it back to them for a fortune. Zack doesn't know whether to call him a commercial genius or just a petty kid who hates losing, but Masaru stands his ground. Zack's father is all in, thrilled to finally get revenge on the guild that rejected them while lining his pockets with gold. Zack is just relieved to see his old man so fired up as Masaru orders him to get to work on the wood. Once this house is remodeled and the dust settles, their journey back to the Beastman City finally begins. Zack admits he's finally getting used to Masaru's wild and terrifying demands. Masaru lays out the plan. They gather the gear, finish construction, and move out in exactly 1 week. But there's one more thing. Masaru reminds Zack he needs to officially dump his girlfriend before they leave. While Zack's family reels from the shock, Diana prepares her goodbyes, and her father plans one last meeting with his drinking buddies. Diana rolls her eyes, knowing those drinking buddies are actually the craftsmen joining their crew. It's just a pathetic excuse for a party while the clock keeps ticking. Looking back, Masaru realizes his negotiations with the king were a massive success. He's walked away with a mountain of loot. But more importantly, he's assembled an elite squad. 6 blacksmiths, leatherworkers, carpenters, tailors, cooks, and 3 allies he'd trust with his life. Zack and his father head off to put their tools to use, rekindling their old bond over the sound of sawing wood. With everything finally in order, Masaru heads to the throne room to bid the king a final farewell. The king is shocked Masaru is leaving so soon, but Masaru makes it clear his business here is finished. At least for now. The king jokes that the town will finally have some peace from Masaru's insane shopping sprees, relieved that no literal gods were summoned this time around. Realizing the king's spies are top tier, Masaru smirks and admits the revolutionary new shop was his way of saying thanks for everything. This isn't just a store, it's a massive 3-story stone masterpiece with a layout and display style this world has never seen. But the real kicker is the security. Pulling a single lever drops a massive iron cage to trap any thieves instantly. The king is skeptical, but Masaru promises that once this place opens, every merchant in the capital will be begging for his secrets. This isn't just about sales. It's about kickstarting a commercial revolution that will push civilization into a brand new era. The king doesn't hold back, calling Masaru out for always using his overpowered skills to brute force every single problem alone. He gives him a brutal reality check. If you have people at your disposal, you better start using them. He warns Masaru that a true leader knows how to delegate, and if he keeps trying to do it all himself, he's still just an amateur. The king's words hit Masaru like a ton of bricks, making him realize he can't build a legendary city or run his home center without a real team. Masaru bows in gratitude, but the king just smirks, acting like he was merely talking to himself the whole time. Masaru offers a tech exchange, but insists the recruits must respect beastmen, and they better be tough enough to survive his training. With a final wave, the king says he can't wait to see the incredible city Masaru is building. And with a firm handshake, these two power players seal their deal. He casually suggests they ditch the business talk next time for drinks, even offering to invite the gods themselves. The king nearly has a heart attack, begging him to stop since you can't just summon deities like they're drinking buddies. Masaru strolls over to the capital gates where Zack notes how busy he's been, and Masaru just shrugs off his long chat with the king. Zack confirms the cargo is ready to roll, but they've got a whole new group of travelers tagging along. One of the newcomers marvels at the wild energy of the group, admitting he's never seen a caravan this lively before. But the girl beside him snaps at him to stay focused, reminding him they're lucky to even have permission to join. Masaru sees their numbers have swelled with 8 human and elf adventurers looking to retire in the new city. They seem laid back and friendly, but they'll be the backbone of the city's security, and suddenly, a man shouts out to Masaru. He asks if Masaru is going to fire them up with an epic speech, and as the crowd's excitement hits a fever pitch, Masaru can't help himself. He leaps onto a caravan and pours his heart out, thanking every single person for joining him on this journey to build a new home. He shouts that their incredible skills will forge a new legacy, creating a bridge for everyone waiting for them at the finish line. The air is thick with anticipation as everyone prepares for the road ahead. Masaru vows that while the road will be brutal and exhausting, it'll be packed with pure joy if they face every challenge as one. With a final wave to the capital, the massive group sets off on their grand adventure toward a new life. A massive crowd cheers as they leave, and days later the travelers are buzzing with stories of their gear, the sights they've seen, and the legendary wild boar feast they had the night before. Spirits are soaring, but Zack looks over at Masaru and asks the question on everyone's mind. Isn't he exhausted from all that running? Masaru just shrugs it off, but Zack is floored, demanding to know how he's still standing after sprinting for an entire day straight. Masaru explains that sitting in a carriage makes him stiff, but Zack isn't buying it. Even after Freud warned him, Masaru's god-tier stamina is absolutely terrifying. Masaru teases Zack about getting cozy with the elf girls, but Zack gets defensive, claiming he was just researching their culture and that Masaru is too dense to understand true romance. Suddenly, a girl from inside the carriage pouts and asks Zack if she isn't good enough for him, leaving him stammering and desperate to explain himself. Suddenly, a shout rings out. The river Masaru promised back at noon is finally in sight. Masaru grins as the sun begins to dip, declaring it the perfect time to drop their gear and set up camp right by the water. As the tents go up, a man asks the big question, how much longer? Masaru immediately pulls out his map to find the answer. He reveals they've hit the junction where the road meets the river, meaning they're officially halfway to the Beastman city and right on schedule with only a few days left. But while he's explaining, he notices the elf lady staring him down with an intense, unreadable look. The one-eyed man admits that the dimensional storage was crazy, but seeing Masaru use a map skill on top of everything else is just mind-blowing. Even for an ancient elf. Masaru recalls the rabbit folk being just as stunned, but the veteran claims he's got the charisma to build a city, especially since he's so loved by the beastman who saved his life. Now the whole group is fired up to reach the city, so Masaru tells them to feast and rest while the leader starts organizing the night watch. Masaru checks the supplies to see if they're eating well, and the cook mentions they've still got some leftover meat from lunch to work with. They want to spice things up with some wild bird or fresh herbs, and Masaru promises their master hunter will bring back a feast. The elven huntress vanishes into the woods and returns in a flash with plenty of prey. It's a massive haul. Masaru is floored by her god-tier technique, while Zack wonders why his own bow feels like a toy in comparison. The elf actually gives Zack a compliment, telling him his aim is solid and his instincts are headed in the right direction. But she warns him he's overcalculating. If he just learns the bird's flight patterns, he'll hit them every time, leaving Zack totally confused. She explains these are thief birds, annoying pests that steal your gear for fun. And she's still salty about the one that swiped her water pouch. Masaru asks how those birds taste, and the second she says they're delicious, he's ready to hunt every last one of those pests. Zack admits he's a beast at hunting boars, but these birds are out of his league. Though the elf insists he's got the talent to pull it off, she offers him her own legendary bow, promising it'll let him nail the target before it even has a chance to flinch. But Masaru isn't taking chances, shouting a warning to Zack that this weapon is freaking lethal. The elf is stunned by his knowledge. But when Masaru claims he's built one just like it, she demands he prove it right then and there. Masaru reveals the bow is reinforced with mithril to match his insane power, but she calls his bluff and dares him to draw the string. She's convinced he's just over-tightened the strings, while Masaru starts sweating, knowing that arguing with elves about bows is a total death trap. He decides to settle the debate by aiming for a massive tree way off in the distance. The elf thinks he's playing a prank, but Masaru's dead serious. He's got some dark memories of this bow and prays history doesn't repeat itself. Like accidentally sniping a bear. The elf just shrugs it off as extra dinner, so Masaru locks in and takes his stance. He pulls back with ease, leaving the elf speechless, and releases a shot that blasts straight through a whole row of trees. But then a blood-curdling scream rips through the air from the distance. Panic hits Masaru instantly. He's terrified that he just accidentally sniped a human being. The elf calls him a moron and sprints off, realizing the scream came from a completely different direction. They burst onto the plains to find a pack of wolves tearing into a group of humans, and one woman just hit the ground. She crashes to the ground and the wolves lunge in for the kill. Zack curses their rotten luck while the elf realizes her arrows will never reach the girl in time. Masaru charges forward swinging a massive log, bashing the wolves aside and screaming for the woman to run. Zack and the elf are stunned by his insane speed, while the survivors can only wonder who this hero is as Masaru barks at them to keep moving. The wolves pounce again, but Masaru meets them with a bone-shattering strike. But he freezes when he feels his weapon hit. It's like trying to cut through solid rock. This is no hallucination. He realizes he's literally hacking away at something indestructible. The elf screams for him to retreat, revealing the terrifying truth. These aren't wolves. They're golems! Her arrows bounce right off as the monsters advance, and Masaru realizes their blades are useless against these stone beasts. When suddenly, a mysterious woman appears at his side, offering her blade and telling Masaru to find a way out. Masaru calls her insane since their weapons are useless, but she stands her ground, declaring she's a knight who never turns her back on a foe. She lunges forward to strike, but Masaru grabs her, shouting that pinning them down is their only shot. A fresh wave of golem wolves ambushes them from behind, slamming right into Masaru with crushing force. The knight gasps an apology, drowning in guilt as she watches him take the hit. She watches in horror as the wolves swarm him, while a desperate Masaru screams at them to stay away from his throat. Deepak and the elf stood there frozen, their minds reeling as they tried to make sense of the absolute chaos. Masaru turned to the knight and declared he'd crush these wolves solo, ordering her to fall back to her squad immediately. After she retreated, Masaru's eyes welled with tears of pure rage. Those beasts had ruined his priceless synthetic clothes, a relic from his own world. He whirled like a cyclone, launching the wolves into the sky while screaming that they were about to pay the ultimate price. He whipped out that same devastating weapon that leveled the capital's mansion and unleashed a relentless assault, shredding the wolves into nothingness. The carnage calmed his nerves, but with his outfit in tatters, he realized it was finally time to put those royal tailors he brought along to work. As the dust settled, Masaru breathed a sigh of relief that everyone survived, while a stunned Zack admitted Masaru was a total beast on the battlefield. Zack couldn't believe the guy who should have been dead was overflowing with energy. making him realize he desperately needed to level up his own skills. Even Masaru was shocked by his own performance, having dumped every drop of his mana into body-strengthening magic the second he could move again. The moment that Wolf's fangs sank in, his mana had already surged back to 30%, allowing him to fortify his entire frame and survive. It hit him right then. This was the legendary spirit-class mana recovery everyone talked about. He marched over to the tent where the rescued elves were resting, finding his own elven companion keeping watch right outside the entrance. She confirmed the leader was inside, explaining she was just looking out for her own kind, but as Masaru tried to back away, a voice from within beckoned him to enter. The pair revealed they were actually dark elves, and Masaru wasted no time thanking them for their vital help in the fray. His own elven ally chimed in, noting that these newcomers shared the exact same bloodline as her. As they locked eyes, Masaru's elf grew tense, demanding to know why the stranger was staring her down so intensely. The stranger shot the question right back, prompting Masaru to step in and play peacemaker, though his elf grew suspicious that he was secretly comparing the two of them. Masaru quickly apologized and steered the conversation toward the real mystery. Why on earth were they traveling with golems, and what the hell actually happened out there? A heavy silence falls over them, and Masaru gently tells them they don't have to say a word if they aren't ready. Finally, one of them speaks up, admitting they're desperate for a home and pleading for a place to belong. She asks with hope in her eyes if Masaru's crew could possibly take them in. Without missing a single beat, Masaru gives them a resounding yes! The Dark Elves are overwhelmed with gratitude since they had no other options, while Masaru immediately barks orders at Zack to get the carriage ready for the long haul. The lady is stunned by his kindness, but Masaru makes it crystal clear he's not backing down on his word. One of Masaru's companions laughs, warning the newcomers that they better buckle up for the absolute chaos that follows this man everywhere. This isn't just a random squad, it's a band of legends returning home as they finally roll into the massive Beastman city. May practically flies at Masaru with a massive hug, and he beams, thrilled to see her safe and sound. Adelina and the others laugh, shaking their heads at Masaru's wild antics before he asks where the village chief is hiding. Adelina explains that the chief is busy building up the town but should be there any second. Her jaw drops when she sees the crowd he brought back, an entire squad of elite craftsmen ready to build this city into a fortress. Masaru introduces the dark elves they rescued, and Adelina doesn't hesitate to start prepping a place for everyone to rest. As the dark elves step off the carriage, their eyes go wide at the sight of a magnificent city hidden deep in the mountain peaks. They're absolutely floored to see humans and beastmen working side by side to create something this incredible. Her companion joked that Masaru was definitely up to his old tricks again, pointing toward a crowd of familiar faces beaming with pure joy. That was the look of absolute trust, a sight they knew all too well from their long history together. Masaru walked up to the two dark elves, inviting them to join the massive feast the chief was throwing in their honor, before realizing they hadn't even traded names yet. The first warrior stepped forward as Emeralda, followed quickly by her companion, Arena. Masaru gave a warm welcome in return, telling them to make this village their brand new home. As night fell, the entire village gathered for a massive, legendary feast. Even Alpha and Beta joined the fray, heading off to pay their respects to the chief. Suddenly, Masaru spotted Saphira surrounded by a mob of kids. She apologized for the delay, laughing that the little ones just wouldn't let her go. The children cheered their thanks for the fun and games, shouting that they'd see her again tomorrow morning. Masaru was impressed by how well she'd settled in as a teacher, and Saphira beamed with pride, declaring that a goddess never breaks a promise to teach magic. It was incredibly rare for a divine being to meddle in the mortal realm, but she confessed that she was actually having the time of her life. She loved sharing her mastery of magic and thanked Masaru for the chance. But then, her voice trailed off as she revealed she had to leave, catching Masaru completely off guard. She explained that her lessons were over. Now that Masaru was back, her time as their instructor had finally reached its end. Masaru was stunned. How could a goddess of magic run out of things to teach? But Saphira reminded him of the divine laws against meddling. Since she was only filling in for him, she could only teach what he knew, and everyone had already mastered the basics. Her mission was officially accomplished, and the children pulled her away to join them for a final meal. Masaru is left completely speechless, his mind racing to process what just happened. Saphira announces she's had a blast and her promise is finally fulfilled. She tells him their contract is officially over, But if he ever needs her again, he can just shoot her a message through his status screen. But Masaru isn't ready to say goodbye. He demands exclusive one-on-one magic training starting tomorrow morning, insisting he needs the power to lead his craftsmen. He begs for just 1 hour of her elite instruction every single day. Saphira is absolutely floored, shouting that he's breaking every rule in the book. But Masaru fires back, arguing that as long as he has the talent, she has to teach him the hidden magic he didn't even know he could wield. He claims that as a citizen, he's earned her guidance, and if he masters new spells, she can reopen her classes for the whole town. Pointing out their contract never had an end date anyway, he finally forces a hesitant yes out of her. She's baffled, asking how he isn't already buried under the massive job of rebuilding the city with his new crew. She can't wrap her head around why he'd waste time with her, but Masaru just grins and says, "Because it's fun." She finally gives in, and when Masaru looks confused by her reaction, she reveals a sudden epiphany. She finally understands why her goddess sister is so obsessed with the mortal world, promising to explain it later. But for now, he better be ready for a grueling lesson tomorrow. But the second he shows up at the crack of dawn, he starts whining about the early hour. Saphira shuts him down instantly, barking that he's the one who begged for these lessons, so he better keep his mouth shut and focus. Saphira asks if he's already mastered the basics of imagination-based magic from Victinius. Masaru confirms he has, so she skips the boring lectures and tells him the first step is venting mana from his body, but Masaru just grabs a tea branch and claims he's already a pro, and in an instant he lets his raw, untapped power explode outward. Saphira scolds him for skipping the fundamentals, ordering him to vent his mana into the open air to avoid resistance. Masaru nods, declaring he's going to release every ounce of his magic at once, and as he prepares to unleash the beast, Saphira's jaw hits the floor as his magic rockets vertically into the sky, a legendary phenomenon only seen in reincarnated souls. Masaru asks if he's doing okay, then immediately decides to kick things up a notch by testing out wind magic. Saphira screams for him to stop, terrified that his insane mana pool will turn a simple breeze into a total catastrophe. A colossal, world-shaking tornado erupts from Masaru's fingertips, tearing through the air. Everyone is left paralyzed with shock as Saphira spends the next 7 days drilling him with non-stop intensive lectures. Masaru shows up for his daily grind, but Saphira is nowhere to be found. It's totally bizarre. A goddess this disciplined is never late, unlike a certain lazy deity we all know. He was hyped for his compressed power session when a portal rips open and Victinius steps out, barking at him to shut his mouth before she decides to punish him. Masaru is stunned, gasping that it's been ages since their last encounter. Victinius reveals that Saphira personally called her in to take over his magic training for the day. Since her adorable little sister asked, she's going to be absolutely ruthless with his education, and he better be ready for the pain. Masaru's skin crawls at her twisted grin, finally realizing why Saphira was so glued to her status screen earlier. Victinius mocks their friendship, but Masaru snaps back, telling her to stop wasting time and start the compression training immediately. Masaru senses her foul mood and jokes that she'll get wrinkles if she doesn't chill, sending her into a screaming rage that she's perfectly calm. She warns him that failure will be more catastrophic than a tornado, but Masaru is confident he can visualize the air pressure. He flashes back to his old job where a busted gas cylinder turned into a lethal missile, smashing through walls like a rocket. Victinius commands him to surge his mana once more, and Masaru gears up to give it everything he's got.